Face is dropped on another edition of Soccer Down here. It's a Monday, and it's definitely a manic Monday. It could be an overreaction Monday as well, but it felt more manic, even though maybe it shouldn't. Maybe that's an overreaction? I don't know. We'll try to make sense of everything today. From a short-term perspective about what happened yesterday with the U.S. losing to Honduras, we'll try to take a maybe medium view about what it means and where everything is, and we'll take a big picture view as well. We'll try to make a lot of sense of all of it today. Bart Keeler from the Soccer for US podcast here on the SDH network will be joining us in about 10 minutes to give his take on everything. We'll also hear from John Aiken from Oglethorpe University, not directly about the game yesterday, but about implementing styles of play and about implementing philosophies. I think you guys know by now I call the games for Oglethorpe on the men's and the women's side, and that started because of a lot of respect for John as a coach. And working at the D3 college level and implementing a style of play, especially this year with all the chaos with a no fall season, you're playing a short spring season, you're not able to practice the same way. I want to kind of pick his brain a little bit about how hard it is to create identity, to create a philosophy, and to implement a style with different groups of players that come and go at the college level. We'll get into that too. We'll get into your questions as well, and we're going to try to do those in some different blocks of the show. When we're done with Bart, before we get to the bottom of the hour at 10 o'clock, we're going to take some questions. So if you have them, go ahead and fire them off on Twitter, and we'll get to them there. For those of you on the Twitch pitch, we'll try to get you guys involved throughout the show, but also especially in that last quarter of the hour. We've got Jarrett Smith for a little bit to start the show. And Jarrett, you get first crack at it. U.S. loses to Honduras yesterday. They are not going to the Olympics for the third straight time, the fourth time out of the last 5 editions. What does it mean? What happened?
Sasha Question is the last player to score in the Olympics for the United States.
Hey, don't be smirched.
Sasha Question was a U-23 at the time.
That's true. That was a while ago.
That's infuriating. What happened was you had a team that looked like they were kind of all over the map, played like crap, made mistakes, had a goalkeeper who's been good. I know we've talked about this. Like, Ochoa is good, y'all. It's not like Ochoa it's not like he is a bomb scare every moment of his life back there. Ochoa should be getting a chance to start this season, week 1. But you had a catastrophe coming after. You gave up a goal right before halftime, or you had a let off. That's a beautiful long ball. I don't care what anyone says. And then you have just a mind-numbing mistake right after the break. You get a golazo from your captain, who's trying to drag you back into this thing. You get a ball cleared off the line, and then, hey, man, it's the 88th minute. Jason, we need to bring somebody in to score a goal. Well, Benji's over there, but that's just what they'll be expecting. Let's not do that. I don't know what Jason Christ was doing. All I know is that, if you felt like Jason Christ was on his way to, rebuilding his reputation as a coach and getting a head job, that's not going to happen right now. He's going to be an assistant, and he probably should be for a bit, because to blame it off one game, and whether that's fair or not, that game was not a good ringing endorsement for this man as a manager for really anybody, because, my God, the setup wasn't great, and the changes weren't either. And the performances of the players themselves was not great. And, man, wouldn't it have been great to have some of those U-23s that were playing a meaningless friendly against Northern damn Ireland? I love you, Northern Ireland, but that didn't mean a damn thing. And you had a bunch of U-23s up there. Why not send them to the Olympic squad? Did you think that this team was good enough? Because actually it was. Yeah, you were right. This team was good enough to beat Honduras. I don't want to hear anything to the contrary. You still could have sent them there.
Maybe.
I don't know. I mean,
maybe that's not a definite, and I'll try to make a little bit of sense of that here in a second. Not for all of them anyway, but we don't know if that conversation was even had, and that's an important detail with some other things that have been thrown out there by lots of people in the American soccer sphere these days. So we'll come back to that point.
The American soccer sphere is just it's like the eighth circle in a Spawn comic right now. It's U.S. Soccer Twitter is one of the most it does not take much to set that place off.
Yeah, that's true.
Also, U.S. Soccer. Maybe if you don't play like trash for 50, 60 minutes before you wake up, maybe you don't have to worry about CONCACAF related things happening and CONCACAF games getting CONCACAF-y. Maybe you don't have to worry about that if you play well from the jump. Just a thought.
Yeah, that's a fair thought. The things that I kind of rank here, and we'll get into whatever you guys want to get into as much as we can today. I'm frustrated with the big picture of this tournament as a whole, and it goes to roster selection. It definitely goes to lineup selection and building throughout the tournament. I'm frustrated with that. I'm frustrated very strongly with some of the things we saw yesterday from lineup and substitutions and structure, et cetera, et cetera. I'm frustrated with that. I'm not frustrated with Honduras wasting time and things like that. I mean, look, you have a lead, that's what you're going to do. I also want to make sure it's clear, Honduras gets a lot of credit for what they've done. To be able to go to 4 straight Olympics is an impressive accomplishment in this region. As you see, 2 teams go. The U.S. hasn't gone in the last 3. Honduras has gone in the last 4. You got to give them a lot of credit. They know exactly who they are. They know exactly what they can do. They know exactly what they can't do as well. And they didn't overextend themselves. They didn't try to do something that they're not comfortable doing in this tournament. They have a lot of players playing domestically, and the Honduran league is not at the same level as MLS. It's not at the same level as other leagues around the world. It's not at a bad level. It's just not at the same level. And the biggest difference to me was the mentality. And we talked about this on Thursday at our live show at the Lost Druid. When the mentality changes of the American player, we won't see these things happen. I think the word effort got thrown around a lot, and it was an incorrect word in my opinion. There was not one player who represented the United States in this tournament who did not give effort. There was a lack of urgency in moments, and urgency and effort are 2 different things. You can try hard and you can play hard, but you cannot understand certain moments of the game where you have to put your foot on the gas. Or, as we saw with Honduras especially, take your foot off the gas and know how to handle a situation. Their players have that, and our players do not. It's not purely down to their players playing in the Honduran League or playing in the CONCACAF League or playing in the CONCACAF Champions League, as some of their players have. It is a cultural difference, and it's something that our players need to be embedded with as young as possible. That's one reason why Tony Annan has told us multiple times in interviews that he tries to get international competition for the Atlanta United Academy players, because you're playing somebody different. You're playing somebody with a different mentality that can hopefully impact your mentality and make you a better player in the long run and make you a player who understands the urgency of certain situations. Jarrett, anything else before we get Bart on from you that you wanted to drop into the hopper today?
UEFA still sucks because they won't put universal replay and all their stuff. It finally happened on a high-profile situation with the Ronaldo goal getting called back, but that's at least 3 games where either goal line technology or VAR should have been available. And instead of making it universally available or universally not available, they've just kind of basically gone pick and choose style, like there's some JUCO college tournament, and it's completely embarrassing. And now everyone's going to get publicity about it because something happened to Ronaldo with it, but whatever.
Oh, he kind of got hosed a little bit there.
Oh, no, he got screwed. Don't get me wrong.
That's absolutely a goal.
Y'all go do you.
Yeah. Oh, man. Okay. Well, Jarrett, thank you. If you are free later in the show and want to hop back on, please do so.
That might happen.
Yeah, there's no telling where this thing's going to go. It is a manic Monday, tied in with an overreaction Monday.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll talk to you a little bit later.
Okay. Yeah, probably.
All right. There we go. Thanks, Jared. All right, John, crank up your hopper first before we get Bart on the line of what's in your mind about this situation from yesterday.
Well, the three adjectives. Well, I guess, yeah, I guess two adjectives and a verb: frustrated, disappointed, unacceptable.
Which one's the verb?
Disappointment, I guess, would be the verb. So disappointed, frustrated, unacceptable. Those are the three that popped into my head. I admit that I was listening to the match coming back from Birmingham yesterday, watching Atlanta United and Birmingham Legion. And the one element of the match that stuck out to me in above everything else that we've been talking about so far was the subbing out of Jordi Mihailovic as early as it was. You're one of the guys that's been part of that offensive fulcrum that has been there in the tournament for you, subbed out early when you needed a goal, and it's a game of moments. And those two moments that you always look at, late in the half, beginning of a half, both of those moments turned out for Honduras, and they got the 2-0 lead, and obviously you get the one goal back and you're trying to fight. But yeah, the lack of urgency stuck with me, and I don't know, it just seems like more often than not, it's like you're waiting for that sense of urgency, and it's like, oh, we're down by X number of goals, and then urgency happens. It's just, like I said, I have no empirical evidence to support it, but that's just a feeling that I got. But yeah, those are the three adjectives and one situation that stuck in my head yesterday as I was driving back from Birmingham.
Yes, and we will get John's info on the training exercise in Birmingham, Alabama yesterday as well. Save that for hour number 2. He took notes, so we'll see if he can read them. All right, John might freeze here, which is always entertaining when it happens. Don't do that because that's even creepier than normal. We're going to get our friend here on the show, Bart Keeler, right now, and let's see if we can pull this off without any crazy fuss. But John will probably freeze, and just bear with us, and we'll be okay. Bart with the Soccer for US pod, I'm sure he will have one for us here very shortly to break all of this down. Bart's with us now. What's up, Bart? How you doing this morning?
Well, I did not wake up feeling much better. I thought a good night of sleep would help that, and it did not. It still hurts. It's still very disappointing.
Tell me, because this is the I think the big picture thing that we're going to get into throughout the day. It does hurt. It doesn't for me, and it might be different for different people. For me, it doesn't feel like it did in 12 or 16. 12 especially, because I remember watching that and was beyond angry at the poor performance in that. 16 was incredibly frustrating. It definitely doesn't feel like Trinidad in 2017 not going to the World Cup. But it does anger you a bit, you know? It should not have happened. And I think the why is the biggest thing here. And there's short-term elements and there's big picture elements of that. Where do you want to start? Do you want to get into like coaching, tactics, the decisions in the tournament and in the game yesterday, and then maybe go big picture towards the end?
So I think it makes sense to start at the micro level and just look at what went wrong in this game, particularly. And first off, I'm not going to put any blame on any single player. I thought players had good tournament. I thought some players had not great tournaments. But at the end of the day, I don't think they were set up to succeed in totality. And that we can talk about in the game yesterday was because there was a very obvious lack of attacking creativity. Jackson Ewell was your most creative player out there in the second half. And no offense to Jackson Ewell, that's not his role normally in a team. He's a great distributor, great passer. Expecting him to be your creative attacking midfielder is not putting him at his best position. So it starts with the just inability to really manufacture good attacking moments throughout the tournament. The team struggled to find ways to get the ball to Jesus Ferreira in the box. There were some runs that Jonathan Lewis had that probably should have resulted in a goal, but shockingly enough, he wasn't able to convert. It really was frustrating because even despite being down 2-0, the U.S. had more possession. They had a better share of the ball, but they were just toothless most of the game, and it does come down to a lack of attacking creativity.
So, Bart, as things are starting to build, and before you came on, I talked about moments. And at 45 plus 4, there's one moment.
Yep.
Then the other moment, which it shocked John and Stu on Fox. It shocked a lot of us because it's just one of those things that happens. And with the lack of a sense of urgency so far in a first half where nothing was happening, then you're down 2-0 after you snap your fingers. And then that urgency seems to show up, even though you weren't set up to succeed. And it's almost like you're having to fight a double uphill battle, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem, right? When you don't have a whole lot of attacking creativity and you go behind 2-0, where are those goals going to come from? And like I said, the U.S., you can look at the Dominican Republic performance, but it took a whole half to even manufacture 4. You didn't get any goals the first half. You made a couple of changes, got 4 goals in the second half, but you're playing the Dominican Republic, a team that is just not of a very good quality. The entire tournament, the team struggled to create goal-scoring chances. And when it did, it struggled to then put away those goal-scoring chances or make the best of them. And to your point about moments, the U.S. had moments where they could have capitalized on an opportunity. I mentioned Jonathan Lewis. He had 2 in the first half where he had a good look on goal, and for some reason it goes outside even the framework. We didn't have a shot on goal the first half. We only had, I think, 2 the whole game. That's not good enough. It's just not good enough. And that seems to be the theme when it comes to the U.S. men's program. It's just not good enough, and that's embarrassing. That is unacceptable. It's all those things that we've thrown out. If you want to call those verbs, you can, John, but they're adjectives.
I was waiting for that.
It's a Monday.
But you saw these. I'm drinking coffee out of an Arsenal mug, and it's hard to say that the guy drinking coffee out of an Arsenal mug thinks the U.S. is the most disappointing thing he's seen in a long time. It's really frustrating that it just continually happens because this shouldn't have happened. Honduras is a very good no one's arguing that.
Yep.
No one overlooked Honduras.
Nope.
If you did, that's on you. No one in this team, I hope, overlooked Honduras, knowing that they had beaten us last time. They're 2-time champions of this tournament. They've been to the Olympics now 4 times in a row, and we haven't. If you're overlooking Honduras, then I really don't want you a part of this U.S. men's soccer program because that is pathetic, to be quite honest. But at the same time, that roster of 20 guys, we can talk about who wasn't there, who wasn't, or who was. That roster should be better than what was there for Honduras.
Yeah.
We can talk about who was, playing against Northern Ireland early in the day. We can talk about who didn't get released by club. But at the end of the day, you had 20 guys, most of whom play regularly for an MLS team, or not only start. It's still better than what we had seen in previous Olympic tournaments, and it was still better than most any other team out there beside Mexico. And you didn't get the job done. And that's the problem, is whether that's a Jason Kreis problem, which I think a lot of it is down to a guy who hasn't been successful in MLS in over a decade. And is it a Berhalter problem? I don't know. Is it an Ernie Stewart problem, the guy who's supposed to be in charge of player development and the whole program as a whole? Is it a Brian McBride problem? I don't know where the problem starts. I just know that we keep seeing kind of a similar product of not getting the job done when it matters.
Yeah, we'll get into the roster selection part in a minute. I want to get really micro on yesterday.
Okay.
The structure of the team. No problem with Ochoa in goal. He has a horrible mistake. It happens to young players.
He got put in a really bad position too.
Yeah,
let's be nice to. Okay, yeah,
he was put
mistake.
Right. He was put into a difficult spot. He should have handled it better. He made a bad mistake, but yeah, he was put into an uncomfortable spot right there early in the second half. The tournament's not on his head. You go back and look at some of his performances earlier. You're not even here if he doesn't have the performances that he did.
First 5 minutes he made a save that kept Honduras off the score sheet. So
yeah, exactly, it's not on him. The back line, I think, was the right back line for this game. Kessler struggled, but he didn't get sent off. I thought he was going to. I thought you were going to have to pull him on that yellow card because he was looking like he was struggling with Honduras' forwards. The game changed a bit, and he wasn't put under pressure. The back line was fine. The front 3, I think, was the right front 3 for this group. I would have loved to have seen Benji Michel more in this tournament, and it's incredibly frustrating that we didn't, because I think he gives you creativity from a wide position that you didn't have creativity much of anywhere. But the midfield is the part that I keep coming back to, and I just can't figure out why 3 holding midfielders, essentially. I know the structure, and I think the structure is something Atlanta United fans will recognize this year. It's 1 holding midfielder, 2 8s. It's 6 and 2 8s, if you want to put it that way. That's fine. But all 3 of the players, their profile as players, you can say they're an 8. You can say they're an attacking midfielder all you want.
Oh, look, I've played goalkeeper my whole life. You can call me a 10, but I'm not.
Exactly. Like Jackson Ewell played as a playmaker in college. That was a long time ago. He's a 6 now. He's a holding midfielder. Andres Pereira is a holding midfielder who can play as an 8, but those 2 were reversed. That feels like the biggest mistake to me, in that you took Jackson Ewell out of his comfort zone sitting deeper. You put Andres Pereira there, and you could see it early on. The pressure and the shape was way out of whack because Pereira wanted to go. So you put 2 players in the midfield in awkward positions for them to be comfortable in a game where you really needed players to be comfortable.
Right, and so that, again, goes back to a roster build, because who was supposed to be in those 2 number 8 positions to be more creative? No one on this roster really had that. And you tried Georgi Mihailovic in the first game. It wasn't very successful.
Mihailovic has played centrally in a role like that, but as a 10 in front of 2 holding midfielders.
Right. It's a different situation.
Yes, that is. It doesn't sound like a big deal, but it is. It's a big, big difference. The other thing I wanted to get into on this with you is then the changes. The substitutions were crazy, and the lineup selection I thought throughout the tournament was weird. Is this an unfair statement in your mind, Bart? The U.S. got worse throughout the tournament and played their worst game in their last game and played their best game in their first game.
So I definitely agree that we played our worst game in the last game. I don't think we got worse necessarily, because I do think the Mexico game, even though we lost 1-0, was a pretty good performance.
Sure.
Like I didn't have a whole lot of bad things to say about the way we played in that game.
That's fair. I'm totally with you on that. Good call.
But yeah, to an extent, I mean, we didn't play our best game when it mattered most. Let's just put it that way. The most important game right out of the bat was Costa Rica. You didn't play super well, but you got the result. That's fine. Dominican Republic, I'm not... whatever. You won.
Yeah, it was what it was.
Mexico was fine. I thought the performance... Mexico is a very, very, very good team with a lot of quality players. That's fine. But this game was very disappointing because I thought we looked disorganized from the beginning, and we never found ourselves playing within the system that we're supposed to play in. I think we played our worst when it mattered most at the end, but I don't know if we necessarily got worse. But you did lose 2 in a row to finish the tournament, so that's frustrating.
So, I mean, I know that we are all, I think, as a group, frustrated about what happened, and let me go back to briefly something that you talked about, and it's probably a larger issue, Bart, in all of this is, and Jarrett brought it up too, is the idea that some of the folks that were in Northern Ireland could have been of benefit for this run in this tournament, and yes, the guys that you set up for this particular run to try to get into the Olympics, they have a lot of MLS experience. But I know a lot of folks are going to be drawn to that group that was in Northern Ireland, saying that some of those guys could have helped as well, had logistics, been something that could have been taken care of as a part of all of this equation. So I know that that's going to be a talking point today too.
Well, would they have helped? Absolutely. Were they going to be able to help? Probably not.
Right.
That's where, we get it. But there were other guys in Europe that could have been released. I mean, Conrad de la Fuente is playing on Barcelona's B team. I'm sorry, Barcelona. Do you need him for the however many matches he would have missed at your reserve level? Why couldn't U.S. Soccer have gone to get Conrad de la Fuente? Mm-hmm. Of all the players who I think played in the Northern Ireland friendly, the only one who I really think that the U.S. may have had a chance of getting was Brendan Aronson. just because could have called in a favor with Jesse Marsh. He is an American coach. He has been a part of the U.S. men's national team program before, and maybe you could convince him, like, you don't really need Aronson to win the Austrian Bundesliga. It's just, I think he would have been maybe one you could have snagged, but the players who were playing against Northern Ireland are there because they're playing at top-level clubs in top-level leagues, and they're by far the players who need to be on the senior national team. But there were some players in MLS that we skipped out on, and that's the more frustrating thing for me is when you looked at the 48-man roster preliminary roster that was released back in February, there were players on there that and they were even in the training camp that Jason Kreis had, this all-important training camp, the only time apparently that these players were ever able to learn how to play soccer in Jason Kreis's mind, because apparently they just weren't good enough from his comments yesterday. But you had guys like Cole Bassett, Frankie Amaya, you had guys even left off, Caden Clark, Gianluca Busio. These are age group players who maybe haven't played in the, quote, system trademark, but they're really good young players in MLS who have, especially with like a guy like Busio, has made a mark on MLS very quickly in his career, not called up to play in this tournament.
And haven't really heard anything about why. And that's the hard thing with the Olympic qualifying. That's the question. Everybody's zeroed in. I mean, to the point that, you're seeing respected writers like Doug McIntyre say that now the U.S. Federation should call in every Atlanta United American player to the Gold Cup roster just to do it. Everybody's zeroing in on the Atlanta side of this when I've got the preliminary roster right here. There hasn't been any conversation about Conrad de la Fuente, why he wasn't part of this.
Why couldn't we get him?
If Barcelona said no, okay, that's fine. But that hasn't come up. We don't know about Ricardo Pepe, a forward who has scored goals throughout his career.
An actual forward.
Yeah. We don't know why he wasn't here. We have to assume it was because of player selection. Cade Cowell from San Jose, very young, part of the preliminary roster. He didn't get picked. Why? Eric Williamson. Portland is playing in CONCACAF Champions League. We haven't heard an explanation. Did Portland say no? Don't know.
At least Atlanta United gave their explanation. Portland's probably in the same boat, but at least Atlanta United said, nah, that's not happening.
Yeah, we don't know about Eric Williamson. We don't know the situation. Keaton Parks, New York City. We don't know, and he's another player in that midfield as an 8 who would have been a good fit playing in significant minutes for a top team who played in CONCACAF Champions League last year, by the way. Gianluca Busio, Cole Bassett, Frankie Amaya. All central midfielders that you mentioned that were not part of this. Brendan Aronson is a prime example of one. Now, the situation, and I know it's easy to point to the senior roster and say there's a bunch of U23s who played in that group. We don't know what the conversations would have been had. We don't know what happened. Did the U.S. Federation call up Chelsea and say, we'd like to send Christian Pulisic to this tournament? Now, we know we can't get him until the window opens, and that's fine. If you had Christian Pulisic drop in for the Mexico game and for the semifinal, you're going to take it. We don't know if that call was made. We don't know. But everybody zeroed in on 3 players who, frankly, the defense wasn't the issue in this tournament. There were individual mistakes defensively, sure. But you didn't lose this tournament because of defense. You lost this tournament because you couldn't score goals.
Yep.
You couldn't create chances. And there's a number of players on this preliminary roster that are not a whole bunch of international players, by the way, not a whole bunch of guys playing in Europe outside of Conrad de la Fuente and Brendan Aronson, that you didn't call. And that's a problem.
And so first off, I will address the Atlanta United thing. I would love to have seen Miles Robinson in this tournament. I still think that he would have benefited and it would have helped the team.
It would have helped the U.S. team.
Brooksland and make the final roster, but Miles Robinson absolutely would have helped his team.
It would have helped the U.S. team, absolutely.
Yeah. That said, that wasn't the issue. Why weren't these players called in that you mentioned? Very, very specifically, several of those players made the training camp roster and were cut. For guys who were older. That's it. That seems to be the only quality that they had over those guys as they were 23 and maybe a little bit more athletic.
If you put Frankie Amaya into this team, your creativity problem is solved in the central midfield. Why in the world is Frankie Amaya not there?
Jason, it's because Jason Kreis was last good in MLS in 2010. I'm sorry.
13. I'll go 13. He did get to the final 13. In 13.
Jason Kreis was picking players for a U.S. team that would have been good in 2012 to 14. He was not picking players who are supposed to be successful in this modern 2021 version of the U.S. men's national team. Now, my question then comes, was Jason Kreis the sole decision maker in this?
Yeah, I don't know.
And we don't know that either. And so we're kind of speculating that he made these picks. I mean, I'm assuming he got the final say because this is his team to manage.
Right.
Yeah.
But U.S. soccer as a whole, again, Ernie Stewart, Brian McBride, and Greg Berhalter, what was their role in trying to work with clubs to get these players released? Gianluca Busio doesn't have a CCL match to worry about.
No.
Cole Bassett doesn't. Frankie Amaya won't have a CCL match to worry about until he comes to Atlanta. You know, it's not like these players had a pressing match coming up. You know, the season starts April 17. They would have been done even by, before the end of March and had plenty of time to come back, quarantine. And in my opinion, I think a tournament like this does more to help you prepare for the season than just a preseason camp. You're getting competitive matches in really early.
Yeah, for teams that could have had guys come back in quarantine and be ready for the start of the season, and especially for somebody like Busio, who Peter Vermes has been in Kansas City almost as long as Gianluca Busio has been alive. Like the system is pretty well established. He can miss some training sessions. He knows exactly what he's doing there.
Right.
And he's another one who they put the number 10 shirt on him for a reason in Kansas City. He can play deeper, but he'd be another one who you could have put in that central midfield and would have created. And you saw him deliver in a game that had a lot of urgency to it in the postseason.
Yep.
He played really well. Didn't see him.
This is something that the only real macro take that I have about this, because I don't think at all that this result means that the U.S. can't qualify for a World Cup.
100%.
I don't even think, if you look at the 2012 and 16 failures, we definitely made a big deal about the fact that those failures led to the U.S. not qualifying for the World Cup in 2018. And that was valid then because a lot of those players, at that point, we needed those players to be at that level to help us qualify for a World Cup, and they weren't. This is very different because you saw the Northern Ireland match. I think 11 of those guys were U23 eligible, and there were tons more who weren't able to be released. So it's not like we have to worry about talent production. We have the talent. Mm-hmm. But what's still concerning me, and this was the very first time, truly, that Berhalter and his system had a chance to prove the proof of concept.
Yeah.
And it failed. Now, I'm not going to say here that, the system's not working. I've been a critic of the system, capital T, capital S, for a while, because my issue is when you have such a regimented, regulated, formulaic system at a national team level, it oftentimes doesn't work because you're calling in players who may not have a whole lot of training time in your system, who might not fit that system. You're not finding, this isn't a club where you can just go buy a player who fits that dual pivot number 8 that you want, right? Like, you have to deal with what you have to deal with. And I think that this was a classic case of, well, maybe not classic, but this was a showcase of the fact that the system is okay, but when you're trying to find players out of this pool to fit the system because they do this specific job very well, but you're passing over more talented, better players because they might not fit your idea of what this type of player should be like in this position in this system, that's a problem. Yep. We haven't seen that too much in 2020 and 2021 with the Berhalter men's senior national team.
Yeah, you haven't. That's one thing I was going to say was Berhalter, I think, has become more flexible with his structure and with his system, which is good. felt like the 2019 Gold Cup and the run up to that was the wake up call.
It felt like 2019, where you're just saying like, oh, we got to get guys who make this system work, and it's like, okay, I get that, but the guys who make the system work, Weston McKennie, Eunice Musa, Tyler Adams, they're not in this tournament. They're not going to be because they weren't going to get released by their clubs.
Yeah, I think, and Bernd brings up a point because I've been talking to Bernd about this a lot on the Discord, and I don't think you're questioning the philosophy, the way to play, and I don't think you're questioning the style. I think, where you're the same place I was when Berhalter took over with the capital T, capital S, don't forget the trademark at the end of it, the system where it was, no, I'm going to make Tyler Adams tuck inside and be an additional holding midfielder. And okay, I don't have Tyler Adams, so now I have to make Nick Lima do that. Does Nick Lima do it well? No, but I'm going to make him do it. That was the issue I had because that's too far down the road. That's a tactic. The style of play, a 4-3-3, possession-based, one holding midfielder typically, two in front, controlling play through possession. These are all pretty basic things. It's kind of hard to get frustrated about that. I don't think anybody is. I think Berhalter has adapted to the players he has. In this tournament, and where I was most frustrated with this element of it, was the substitutions in the second half, where you have to create chances. You have to find something going forward. And yes, you pulled Georgi Mihailovic at halftime, which I was screaming in all caps in our watch-along thread because I did not understand that at all. You never brought on Benji Michel, and you never changed the shape at that point. When you brought on Sebastian Soto, you just moved Ferreira into a central midfield position, which wasn't what was needed at that point. You weren't building things up. You needed to get direct. You needed to start throwing the ball forward and just trying to make something happen, and you didn't do it. That didn't make any sense. And I think that's an issue with Jason Kreis.
Yeah.
And it feels a lot to me like I did after Bruce Arena's last game in Trinidad, where you can look at individual performances, sure, you can look at different things, but the tactics on the day in a must-win game were not there. It's not system, it's tactics. Like the tactics of the day were not correct. The lineup was not correct. The changes were worse somehow.
The changes were the worst part of yesterday, absolutely.
Yeah, it's the day. We can get big picture and we can talk the roster selection, and all that is part of it. And it's not that it's one or the other. But on the day, you were outmanaged and outplayed by an inferior team. And it's not that Honduras is bad, but they are not at the same level when you look at their roster compared to the U.S. roster.
Right.
They're not at the same level, in my opinion, and you were outplayed pretty thoroughly, and you were absolutely outcoached.
Yes.
And that shouldn't happen.
Yeah, I think, again, the starting lineup, when it came out, I was like, okay, this is fine, whatever. I still have an issue with putting Jack Daniel at the advanced 8 position as opposed to Perea. I thought that Perea and Dotson would have been better at the 2 8s because they're going to run, they're going to work, they're going to win balls back.
100%.
And Jackson Newell can kind of sit and, link up a little bit better.
I would have played Benji Michel over Lewis as well. I thought Lewis had a poor tournament, and I think Benji Michel's a player who could have given you something different.
Well, at halftime, I would have taken off Lewis and put on Saucedo or Michel. I would have kept Mihailovic and taken off Lewis.
I definitely would have kept Mihailovic, absolutely.
You needed to make a change at halftime. Absolutely, that's fine. And in a tournament where you have 5 subs, a change at halftime, do it. Fine.
Yep.
But then, at the very last sub you made was Johnny Cardozo for Jonathan Lewis. Don't get me wrong. I am very high on Johnny. I think he can be very good.
Yep.
Same, but I was screaming.
He's a holding midfielder.
That's what I was screaming.
Up an attacking winger for a holding midfielder.
That's what I was screaming. Yep.
And so that is a Jason Kreis issue. It's also a little bit of a player selection issue because my next question would have been, well, who else would you have replaced him with? Benji Michel? Okay, maybe, but
I would have,
at that point, I'm not saying that, Benji Michel to me isn't going to affect the game that drastically in the 5 minutes he would have had.
Ricardo Pepe would have been nice.
Maybe he would have, but we don't know. So it was a very bad performance by Jason Kreis. I think the issue for me for Kreis is he wants to. I will take a lot of offense with the comments he made post-game. One of which talked about how players were misplaying touches, not getting their foot on the ball, balls going under, all these things. And he's like, well, that's just MLS preseason. And I'm like, bruh, you've had these two camps in January with this group of players and in March leading up to this tournament. I get that it's still preseason, but let's not pretend like these players shouldn't know how to trap a ball. That doesn't just go away because you haven't been playing for a couple months. That's, and if it does, then, maybe we need to pick better quality players.
And as we're looking at this, it's not that folks should be locked into the idea of the system, capital T, capital S trademark was wrong. It's the implementation as it's working its way from Berhalter to Kreis in some form.
One sec, John. I also want to differentiate one thing because I think it's important here. The system, capital T, capital S, is dead. That's not happening anymore because that, to me, was where you made a philosophy a tactic and made it rigid. That's not the issue anymore. The system, if we want to still talk about it in that term, is honestly not really different than what Atlanta United's going to do this year. It's not really different from what you see Manchester City do on a pretty regular basis. It's not very different than what Mikel Arteta wants to do. Do all of them do it in different ways? Absolutely, because they're different people. But the idea from the system lowercase t, lowercase s, is we can play with the ball. We can put pressure on the opponent. We can control the game with possession. Pretty simple. And we're probably going to do it mostly out of a 4-3-3. Okay.
Yeah. And we tried to do that this tournament.
Yeah, and that's fine. And that's how they should play. That's the right way to play. The issue with the capital T, capital S, and it's so important to separate it.
Yeah.
There is nothing about playing in that way that says you have to make a right back tuck inside to be an extra holding midfielder. Pep can do that because of the players he has. But as Pep said very clearly, he can't do that when he's playing Mendy as a left back because Mendy can't do that. Mendy needs to play up and down the flank. So when he picks that player for that game, he doesn't do that. Berhalter was making players do that, even though it didn't suit the player. Nick Lima is the version of Mendy in this scenario. You don't make Nick Lima do that because it's not his game.
No.
Okay, that's the capital T, capital S system. Yeah. The mentality of playing with possession that U.S. soccer is going with is the correct way to go. No question about that for me. I don't want people, because David Ochoa made a mistake, to start that's playing out of the back. When playing out of the back goes wrong, it's going to happen. You're going to make a mistake, but it's the right way to play.
Right. And so my overarching thought in all of this, Bart, is that it wasn't the philosophy that should have been, that folks should be focusing on here. That's the issue. It was the in-game tactics of Jason Kreis in this game that you needed to advance that did not work in multiple points across the board, starting with lineup selection, lineup placement, player substitutions, all of this. It was the tactics and the adjustments, not the philosophy coming in.
I would push back a little bit and say a little bit of the quote system that we have been talking about found its way into the Kreis approach to this, because he did pick players who he felt would be able to execute the system better, and he chose those players over players who I think we all agree are just technically better. Yeah. And that is a Jason Kreis problem still. Yeah. And a problem that we do have in talent identification in the United States. Oh, well, they're big, they're strong, they're fast.
100%.
We like them.
Ding, ding, ding.
I mean, I refereed some SAPL games over the weekend where the biggest, tallest, fastest girls weren't the best players on the field. Yeah. Now, was there a couple of girls who were big, tall, strong, fast that were very technically gifted? Yeah. But soccer is a game where being 6'8" doesn't necessarily mean you're a great player. This isn't basketball. This isn't, you don't need a Julio Jones 6'4" wide receiver every time. Although I still think Julio Jones would be a great goalkeeper, but that's neither here nor there.
I'm good with that.
So I do think that to an extent, the philosophy failed because it was Jason Kreis's application of Berhalter's philosophy. And that brings us to a whole different point of why was Jason Kreis appointed as this U23 manager? Now, that is probably a discussion that would take us another hour, but, I think that it's a valid question of, here's, I guess, my final thought about all this, is that Honduras has qualified for the Olympics 4 times in a row, Mexico 3 times in a row. Mexico puts value and time into the U23 system outside of the qualification year. Now, I'll give Berhalter and the U.S. men's program a little bit of credit in that they hired Jason Kreis very early on to lead this U23 program. But it still was, he was coaching Fort Lauderdale CF while doing this as well. Mm-hmm. At that point, why didn't you hire a full-time person? It's just those little things that are like, we definitely took some things for granted, I felt. And that's where I think things let down. And that is a top-to-bottom issue still on the men's side of the program in U.S. soccer. And that is a problem that we have seen because, in my opinion, you could have picked a guy. I mean, I said this last night to one of my friends, and I was like, I feel like I would have felt better with Stephen Glass on the sideline as opposed to Jason Kreis 100%. Because Stephen Glass is a guy, not necessarily Stephen Glass, but Stephen Glass is a guy who is used to not only working with younger players and developing younger players, but he's used to implementing a system that is not necessarily his, but he still believes in the philosophy.
Yeah, it's not rigid.
And that's the thing. As Jason Kreis has been coaching for how long? The dude has what he wants to do with the team, and he knows what type of players he wants and all these types of things. So his biases snuck in. It's not his fault. That's who he is. His team is going to look different than Greg Berhalter's team because they've been coaching for about the same amount of time, it feels like. So I think that's where we can talk about some macro level, but it still is a micro issue because I don't know if it's pervasive, but it's still an issue with U.S. soccer that we're not necessarily valuing the right skills and qualities of players. I think that is still an issue that we see.
Yeah, it's a micro issue because you should have won yesterday, period. With what you had, with what was there, with what you had on the lineup sheet, you should have won. You didn't. So it's a micro issue. There's also macro issues, and that needs to be talked about. I'll throw this at you because I remember saying it when you got to the end of the gap year in the U.S. program and Greg Berhalter was hired after Dave Sarachan really did a thankless job of calling up a bunch of young players, a lot of guys who you could have seen here, worked knowing he wasn't going to get the job full-time, probably. I mean, maybe he was being told he was in the mix, but he wasn't going to get that opportunity. They had pretty much decided on Berhalter way before. Dave Sarachan should have been the manager of the U23s. He should have moved over from the caretaker job with the senior team to the U23s, full stop.
I won't disagree with you because I very much value Dave Sarachan as a coach. I think he's actually a very good U.S. coach, and he doesn't get a lot of the credit. He was phenomenal in Chicago for many years, very consistent.
Adaptable. He's not a system guy either. He's not rigid. He would adapt to playing this way because we saw his teams play this way with the national team pretty much.
Well, and that's it, is that, he took over, he took a group of players who hadn't played together, made them look pretty fun, at least, maybe he would have had a different eye for talent. I mean, he's coaching Puerto Rico's men's national team right now. They got a result over the weekend. That's a pretty big deal for them. That's a huge deal for them. I like Dave Sarachan. I can't even argue with that. I was sad that he had to leave North Carolina FC for obvious reasons. But yeah, I think that was a big swing and miss by U.S. Soccer. But I also understand wanting to clean house. I got it. But it would have been.
It would have been a good thank you for what he did, I think. And he would have fit the bill for the job.
He's a guy who is very experienced, very calm in the way he approaches matches. From what I remember watching him, because before Atlanta United, I was a Chicago Fire supporter, was there on opening day of their stadium, every time his team came out to play, they looked like they were having fun. They looked like they were trying to be, I don't want to say progressive because that has a lot of different connotations nowadays in soccer, but they were trying to score goals.
They were trying to play good soccer. I mean, they were trying to play positive soccer.
Right. He coached guys who now are very influential coaches from top to bottom. I mean, Jim Curtin was one of his guys.
Yep.
C.J. Brown, Gonzalo Segaras, guys like that who are involved in coaching at multiple levels. There were other options for this team to lead this team, and
definitely.
I just think that they dropped the ball by keeping Christ, especially after he took the Miami job, Fort Lauderdale job. You had a chance right then and there, especially knowing you had a year in advance. I don't know. It's disappointing. It's something that there's a lot of reasons, but to everyone's point, it feels very much like 2017, where yes, we can talk about all these reasons why the failure happened, but at the very just smallest level, a manager didn't get the tactics and the player choice right when it mattered.
Yep.
And now that means that we're going to have these conversations about every other big problem.
Oh, yeah. It's going to continue for weeks on end. It's not going to go away.
The next competitive match the U.S. plays is against Honduras in the Nations League final. So we're semifinal. So we're going to have this conversation for the next 2-3 months.
Mm-hmm. All right, where can people hear your full, unfiltered take on all this? You going to let it soak in for a little bit? You going to think about it? You going to drop something quickly?
I think
what's
Bart's going
coming?
to drop a bomb in here somewhere.
Oh no, I'm gonna try to record today or tomorrow and recap. I'm gonna try to recap everything that happened because we have some U.S. men's national team friendlies that I do want to talk about. Yeah. But we'll talk mostly about this debacle. And so we'll look for something Tuesday or Wednesday, kind of recapping the last week that was with U.S. soccer. It was a weird week because you had some really positive performances mixed in with one of the biggest disappointments we've had in a long time. So you can follow that on Twitter at Soccer for Us Pod, and then follow me at Bartimus Prime 19.
Excellent, Bart. Thanks for taking some time this morning for us, man. We really appreciate it. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts later in the week.
Well, thanks for having me, Jason. Thanks, John, and keep it up and enjoy the conversation next, where we talk about what really happened with Jason Christ.
We'll see where this goes. Thanks, Bart.
Thanks, Jason.
Be good.
Bart Keeler, make sure you're following him. Soccer for US Pod will be dropping later this week, kind of digging into the whole week that was, because there were good things that happened in the week when you had the senior national team in Europe. There are positive things. That's why I'm not freaking out. Like, this tournament was a fracaso. It was a failure. It was a disaster, debacle, whatever you want to call it. This tournament 100% was. They should have qualified. They didn't. They should have won yesterday on talent. They didn't. There are reasons why. But the program is not a debacle, a failure, etc., etc., etc. It's not. There's a lot of questions about what went into the failure in Guadalajara. There's a lot of things we don't know. Brendan Aronson, could he have went to Guadalajara at least for the last couple of games? Anybody else that was with the senior national team, could they have went to Guadalajara for the last couple of games, which would have fallen during the window? Could they? I don't know. I don't know if they were asked. I don't know if that was even a consideration. Other players, as Bart mentioned, and I think that's a really important thing that Bart brought up, is you look at that preliminary roster, there's guys that weren't picked that don't have any of these issues that could have been picked. Bucio, Amaya. I mean, those are the two that jump out to me that, like, where are they? Why weren't they part of this group? Cole Bassett's another one who could have been part of this group, who maybe would have been one of the easier fits. Don't know. Don't have those answers. There was a lot in the roster release of finger pointing about things, but those are three guys that, why weren't they here? I don't know. We'll get into all of it as we go. We are going to talk, because we got into it a lot with, the system and the capital T, capital S version and just the philosophy and what it means and et cetera, et cetera. We're going to talk to a really good coach, in my opinion, John Aiken, who's been at Oglethorpe University for a number of years, a D3 program, who, when you're talking about implementing ways of play, I think one thing that has come up a lot about the U.S. way is well, they don't have the players to do what they want to do. I've heard this conversation in American soccer and in soccer in general for years and years and years. Last time I checked, D3 college players are not even D1 college players for the most part. There are some who do transfer down, and there's some who go from level to level, but they're also not professional players. But you don't see good coaches say, well, I can't play that way. I have to play a 4-4-2 and play it long because I don't have good players. Sometimes maybe you have coaches say that when they have a fracaso, which is not good. We'll talk to John about a little bit of how he does it and what are some of the things that are hard about it and what are some of the things that are important about implementing a philosophy and an identity and things like that. John will be coming up here in about 5 minutes. We will get into your questions. I know I said we would on Twitter, but Bart was rolling, and I didn't want to cut him off, and I wanted to continue that conversation. We'll get into all of your questions after we talk to John. And the way the second hour is going to go, we'll talk to John Aiken. We will then get into questions after John Nelson tells us about his trip to Birmingham yesterday, watching Atlanta and Birmingham in a training exercise of 2 70-minute games. And then it will be Q&A the rest of the time that we're talking to you guys this morning. That's coming. I'm sorry we pushed it off. My bad. John is stretching, so you know what that means. It is 10 o'clock right now. So John has to tell us about our good friend in Decatur, Mr. Apolinski.
Steve Apolinski is the man's full name. First name Steve, last name Apolinski. Apolinski & Associates, LLC, proud supporters of everything soccer down here in the SDH network. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, there's only one place that you need to go, and it is having contact with his firm, Apolinski & Associates, LLC. 3 different ways that you can do it. You can shoot Steve an email directly, steve@aa-legal.com. You can give him a phone call. Pick up your receiver, pick up your cell, landline or cell, whichever you have, landline or mobile, 404-377-9191. Get a free consultation that way. Or you can go on the World Wide Web, large device or small, type in the address bar, aa-legal.com, hit the enter key, the return key, the arrow key, whatever advances it to the home page, and the entire world of Apolinski & Associates, LLC opens up right there for you. You can have your questions answered about the kinds of cases that they tackle and all of the accolades that they have received. It's all in one place. And if you still have questions after looking at the homepage, you can go to the pop-up window, because that's what pop-up windows do. They pop up and have your question answered there, 24/7, 365 and a quarter. Recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend Magazine, by Atlanta Magazine, also for being one of the top 100 firms in this here state of Georgia. For wrongful death and serious injury matters, there's only one place you need to go. It is Apolinski & Associates, LLC, and the website is aa-legal.com.
That was a really interesting read.
It had its moments.
I was just grooving to Sunset Drive, actually. Sunrise Drive, sorry. I don't want to get the track name.
Sunrise Drive.
Sunrise Drive. I was just grooving because it was a good groove this morning.
Yes.
Okay. Let's see what people thought about that. Chiefs coach Steve, leaving for a 10 meeting. I award John an 8.2 in advance. Don't let me down.
Thank you, Steve.
Had a work call back just in time. Thomas Jewin. Coco can feel some long vibes this morning. It was looking that way, and then it sped up super, super fast. Okay, Jason Nix. It's like John asks himself, how can I say what I need to say in the most words possible? Sometimes, yes.
The resident wordsmith. That would be me, the unabridged version.
Yes. I was feeling that grief, Katie. That is absolutely true. Thomas says, I think people know how to use their phones, which is correct. I got you a +1 for the chair dancing, +1 for professionalism, +1 for timing at the end. Really solid 8.8. I'm just going to go 6.5. Okay. 9.2, we need positivity after soccer sads. 5, not good, not bad. Slight bump for Jason's vibing. All over the place, 7.5. I missed it, you get a 6. I got a +2 for you for the head bobbing. You got a -2 for no middle name, 7.12. You went from a 10 to jumping off a cliff, 2. Wow, Mr. Fantastic moved to East Germany. I like it.
Wow.
Looking directly into the camera, +5. The arm swipe, -3. Good cadence, too many hand swipes, -6. Total 6.6 out of 10. You got bonus points in there somewhere.
That's what I'm saying. It looked like a -1, and then I get like 7 bonus points.
I see John eliminated the pause before .com. Very good. Just for that, I give a 9.
See, but folks, we have a split audience on that.
No,
folks
I don't
like
think
it
there's anybody who is liking the pause, really. I don't think anybody has said, I love the pause. It's like trying to make something happen that's hard to make happen. You're not hearing
so
the
basically
music
you're saying
well.
I was trying to make fetch happen with a Pat Summerall homage pause on a .com.
Yeah, because you don't hear the music 100% in time, so you're trying to do something that is almost impossible to do. Absolutely. Thomas Jawin does like the 2-beat pause, but sometimes it becomes an 8-beat pause, and that's the problem.
Right.
That's the issue. 8.2, mostly good. Some cleanup of the old shticks still needs to happen. I would agree. An 8, a 9 out of 10. Kefsey couldn't hear it from the kitchen, so that's probably why you got a 9.
Thank you, Kefsey.
Kyle loves the pause. Ricky is a no pause. Perfect Tommy's a team no pause. Thomas Jawin is where I'm at, 2 beats only. Alex Pacine is yelling, you can't sit with us. J-Dub is hashtag no pause. Okay. Lots of things. Lots of things on that read. All right, we're going to go total soccer nerd action right now because, look, everybody's going to be yelling about the lineup, which we have. People are going to be yelling about the subs, which, oh, yeah, we did and we probably will again. But there's also a conversation I think needs to be had about the way the team was playing and or trying to play. And that's what we're going to get into with a coach, somebody that I have a lot of respect for as a coach, and John Aiken from Oglethorpe University. Mateo is going to try to make this happen. And we're going to get John on live. John's been with us for 1v1s many times over the years, talking soccer and talking Oglethorpe. And now John's with us live for, I think, the first time.
I think so.
Very nice.
I think that's right, yeah.
I think this is the first time you've joined us live. It's a busy week for you because you had 2 games over the weekend, and you've got a big game coming up this weekend against in-state rivals Barry. So thanks for the time for us.
Absolutely. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
So what we wanted to get into, I was thinking about this. I'd been thinking about this in general, but yesterday kind of drove it home for me. And I know you haven't been deep in and watching every game and analyzing it. So I'm not asking your opinion on the USU 23s and how that went. What I want to get into is something that's always stood out to me about your teams. And this year is a prime example of it. You have a lot of new faces this year. It is not a normal kind of preparation anyway. This is a spring season that should have been a fall season, and training wasn't normal, like preseason prep wasn't normal. But your team has an identity, and your team has a philosophy that doesn't change when you make a tweak to the formation. It doesn't change when new players come in off the bench. That's something that I think is fascinating for fans to understand is what are the important elements in creating that big picture? Let's just talk about the program as a whole and not the season. What are the elements that you think about when you say, this is what I want Oglethorpe soccer to be known for. This is what I want people to think of when they think of me as a coach. How do you then take that to the training field and then to the match pitch to see it implemented?
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for not forcing me to be on the spot and comment on a much more challenging environment. Coaching the 23s, the selection, player selection, all the things that those guys have to deal with is very different than the world that I'm in. But with regards to, what we're about and what we try to do, I think there could be some common ground there, and hopefully we can stay in that. I definitely don't want to evaluate somebody like that, but I think it goes back to the philosophy of Oglethorpe soccer, and always has been, and this is my 19th season doing it, is trying to be the best that we can be. We haven't always been as dominant as we are now, but I think we've always played the same way, and that is whatever our characteristics are of the players, to be positive, every first touch forward, every I'll go philosophical, and I'll also go very specific and on field. It's engaging a player to draw them out. It's creating the 2v1s. It's positive play with runs, with technique, with attitude. And, we haven't always dominated, but I think it kind of builds on itself when you take that approach. And obviously it goes down to the players too. And then that bleeds into our offseason work on what are the characteristics of the players that we recruit. And not all of them are programmed that way, but we try to instill in as quickly as possible, even as the 3 weeks we've been working with our team. Hey, this is the way we do things here. Even if you're in masks, even if you're having a hard time breathing, you still have a first touch forward, you engage a player. And if there's not movement off the ball to support those things, we address it from there, building on that. So I think it's an attitude thing. It's a technical thing, and we try to improve the players' technique to give them those pictures and those ideas of what we're trying to do, and then you build on it from there.
Coach, how long did it take for you to become, I'll use the word comfortable. How long did it take for you to become comfortable in finding a philosophy and just an approach to the game that you have there at Oglethorpe? Or is it still a work in progress to a certain degree, and will it always be a work in progress when it comes to just your, finding your philosophy and implementing it as consistently as you have?
I think it translated my views as a player. Obviously we've all been influenced by some of the great teams that play unbelievable soccer, whether it's, AC Milan or Barcelona, or pick your favorite team that plays really, really well. And I always thought that there was an optimism of soccer. And I tried to have that as a player. And then it was an immediate transfer of that opinion of the game of I would rather lose and be the best that we can be than celebrate a victory off somebody else's mistake. And I think really, if you drill down on it, that's what it comes down to. And obviously, depending on the players you are, depending on the capabilities that you have, that's going to change a little bit. But if you really want to talk about where it came from, it was an optimism that I thought we could do things a certain way, and we try to translate that. I've certainly gotten better at it after 19 years of lots of mistakes and things like that about how to efficiently transfer that philosophy to a daily, weekly, seasonally, method, if you will. But it comes from an optimistic approach to, how fun and attractive and exciting a game can be.
There's this idea, and I've had this conversation with people who have run professional clubs, people who run amateur clubs, youth, et cetera, that, like Barcelona, for example, when Barcelona and Pep Guardiola became, the way that everybody wanted to try to play, I had so many people push back, well, we don't have players like Barcelona has, so we can't play that way. You don't have players like Barcelona has, but you play a style that is definitely from the positional play, 4-3-3, Rinus Michels, Johan Cruyff, Pep Guardiola, that school. You play that way. What's the challenges of doing it with a group of players that are not world class like Barcelona's had, but you're able to implement a good style of play? What are the challenges of making it work without dumbing it down?
Sure. I think it goes back to, where it comes from. It's an optimism. And I think a coach has to be able to see the perspective and the positive approach and be okay with the learning curve of them trying to do that. I mean, You're going to lose a game 1-0. I mean, I'll give you an example. After having a really successful run in 04, 05, 06, we dropped a little bit in 07 and 08. And actually, probably the most telling thing was in 2010, we were 6-10-1 or 2 or something like that. But we lost 9 of those 10 games by 1 goal, and we outshot all of our opponents. I want to say by 10 in those losses by at least 10 shots. And I really had to do a sell job on those guys because there were some people that were questioning what we were trying to do. And I said, guys, you got to believe that over time, this will win out. It was a freak thing where, nothing would go in at the right time. You're dominating. You give up a weird deflection goal late, and it leads to a loss column. But I will tell you, it was basically the same group of players in 2010 that was in 2011, and we went 17-4 and went to our NCAA, game. So, you have to be given the latitude that you're not going to lose your job, and I think that's obviously a little bit easier at our level than
Sure,
that.
sure.
But I candidly, I would play the same way no matter where I went. Given the parameters of what I was being asked to do, because I think that's what you're capable of.
How different is the 18 to 22-year-old student athlete that you're coaching today than the one that you were coaching, say, a decade and a half ago?
That's an interesting question. I would say that, and as a parent myself, I would say this generation of young people, certainly in the last 10 years, are maybe actually better human beings than we were, certainly. And I think it's from this, I think it's a social media thing. They're constantly being watched. I think there was a learning curve when this just came out, 10 years ago or so, of people made a lot more mistakes, then than they do now. And they're educated on, the damages that it can do. But this mentality of constantly being watched and constantly, hold on one second, that's my son's other phone, being aware that everything is being there, I think it gives, people can pause and thoughtfulness to, more of their actions. Of course, not all, all the way. But that also does come with, I will say this, there seems to be less of a personality with these young people. And we have some great young people and we have some great personalities, but sometimes it's like pulling teeth to get them to be themselves. So I think there's this cautiousness to their personalities with regards to being watched. And I think that comes from social media. I'm no sociologist, so this is a guess on my part, but I think it also makes them a little bit more timid. And I have to say, guys, when you walk across these lines, it's okay to be, an animal. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to do these types of things. So, I have to prompt them to kind of pull them out of their shells, even though they're good players that could come from good clubs and good high schools and good families. I do think it puts a little bit of a damper on, progressive, outgoing personalities. That's the one difference I've seen in the last 10 years.
That's an interesting one. And then the effect of like somebody's personality in general versus their personality on the field, because, I think the personality of players who play in the way that you play and the way that teams and managers who subscribe to these kinds of theories play is you've got to have a personality on the field. You can't be timid. And it's something that I hear you say all the time when I'm calling your games is don't hide. Stop hiding. Like step up. And how do you then, when you see a kid come in, he's talented, he's got the skill, he's got the mentality to play. How do you try to bring that personality out on the field?
Functionally, it's highlighting those moments and really going over the top with supporting them when they do those things. I think that's a better approach. And then also not being afraid from confronting the fact that they don't do it sometimes. Right. And say, I'll give you a really practical example. The time when a ball goes in between two of our players and they both think somebody else is going to get it and they look stupid, and then somebody picks it off and counters or something like that. And then I use this analogy that I'd rather have both of you run into each other being brave and fall down and the same thing happen than both of you assuming somebody else is going to get it. Just that, it's my ball no matter what approach, or my run or my pass or my shot. It's pulling that out of them. And then once they get in a rhythm and they get confident on it, it becomes a little bit of a, then you got to curtail that a little bit so they don't get too carried away. But we need a little bit more of that.
I was going to ask, you kind of led me into this one. When the light comes on for that student athlete, when you tell them don't hide, stop hiding, and they finally have that moment that's that springboard to where they're not hiding anymore, how satisfying is that for you as a coach, where once again you're seeing someone that has that promise, that has that ability that you've seen, for the light to finally come on in a situation like that where they're not hiding anymore? How satisfying is that for a coach when you have that kind of a moment?
Oh, I think that's really when you boil it down, that's what it's all about. It's whatever those things are, overcoming, each person's adversity and coming out of their shell a little bit. It's very satisfying. And that's a continued reward, because as they learn that behavior and learn that that's what we're encouraging them to do, it just gets better and better, because then they start seeing things and patterns 2 and 3 moments ahead about what can be. And I think that's the connection of the optimism, from start to finish, from philosophy to, seeing them carry it on themselves, because that's really what it's about. Can they carry this thing on when we can't, influence it too much from the sidelines?
So then we take it to the next level, where you have to balance the way you want to play and what you believe in soccer. And this is something that I've heard Gabriel Heinze say, fairly recently. It's something I've seen Fernando Gago, who's now in his first year of coaching, say. It's something Pep said, Bielsa said, all these guys say, because it defines the way that you guys see the game. You have to feel it, and you have to have the team play in the way you feel about the game. That's an important element. But then how do you take that? It's easy in a first game of the year, second game of the year, early game, midseason, whatever, to then, for you in a conference tournament or an NCAA tournament game, and for situations where you're in a game that is must win, how do you balance philosophy with results?
I believe that if you do it well, even against a gritty, compact team, it will come out. It will happen. And, like I said about the 2010 team, sometimes it doesn't. And I know that was a season-long approach, but it was always that way. And sometimes you're gonna come out on the wrong side of it. In 2000, I give an example. In 2015, we won our SA regular season title, and we were the number 1 seed, and we lost to the 8 seed Swanee. We outshot them 33-3, and we lost on penalties. I would rather have that happen, because you have to win no matter what. But what are you going to give up if you, in a 1-game format, you totally contradict that or not? And I think that's we don't do that, but we're just committed all the way, because I think that what are you telling your juniors, sophomores, and freshmen that, hey, we did it one way and now it's a 1 game only? I think maybe the slight commentary of, hey, let's be a little bit more careful in front of the back line. We don't want to bring it down quite as much. Challenge them. Every once in a while, let's mix it up and let's break the back line to loosen the game up a little bit more, so it's a little bit easier for us to do that. I think those are the slight adjustments that we might make, but I don't really approach any game differently, whether it's a format. I think it's more of a focused mentality, maybe keying in on some other team's weaknesses or approaches, or be ready for this. But I don't do many things differently outside of the couple of the things that I just said.
How do you structure or how do you answer then the plan B question? Because I've seen this come up, and Barca would get asked this a lot. Pep would get asked this. Other manager, Bielsa gets asked this all the time in England right now, is, well, why aren't you changing this? Why aren't you playing a different way against this opponent? It sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, your plan B is not changing the philosophy, but maybe changing the structure of the team a little bit to either bring something else out or to protect something. But plan B is never to go away from the philosophy.
No, I mean, I think of it this way. Let's just say plan B is implemented with 8 minutes left to play and it's 0-0, or you're down 1-0. I mean, every time you get the ball, you're trying to solve a problem. And, for 85 minutes, you do it one way. I mean, most of the goals come down to, maybe a defender's approach angle's a little off. I think you just have to remain committed to what you're doing. I I don't really have a plan B. Now if you're down 3-0, that's a different story. Right. You got to get up there quickly, and maybe that's a plan B. But if it's a tight game, we just committed to doing what we're doing because we think over time it's gonna make it work for us. So,
what advice would you give a young coach starting out who is trying to figure out who they are philosophically and try to find their own voice? How would you encourage a younger coach or even younger student athletes today as they're trying to find their voices themselves, whether it's in practice and play in a game state or what have you? What advice would you give younger coaches and players today about finding their philosophy and finding their voice?
That's a really good question, and it fascinates me a lot. And I still, read the Soccer Journal articles every month. And, I always love seeing, some of the coaches that have been around for 30, 40, 50 years talk about these things. And one thing that resonates with me is you've got, be authentic, whatever it is, be authentic and stick with what you believe. I think you should always be aware of so many other ways to get it done. But I think there's a truth within all of us. And if you stick with that truth, you're going to get to, define that a lot faster than, halfway, getting into everybody else's opinion. So I think it's, be aware of what's out there, but what do you connect with as a coach, and there's no right way to do it. But I think that commitment to being authentic is it transfers to your players, and your players. These kids are all so smart and it's such an intelligent generation, of kids that have watched the game at a high level. They're watching Premier League. They're listening to podcasts. They're, these kids are, they know what's going on. And I think they can sniff out somebody who's faking it a lot quicker. And that's what I would recommend, young people is just, whatever it is, they might disagree with you, but they can respect you that you're trying to be, run the show your way and what you believe in. And I would stick with that. And I picked it up from so many experienced coaches over the years. And I think just, you can't go wrong with that, whatever it is.
I mean, I know you're seeing it at the Oglethorpe level, but you're also seeing it with the kids you work with on the youth club level. Do you feel like the basic level of play in this country is improving? Is it still heading in the right direction in a good way, a good speed? You think we're getting better?
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I think we're on track. I think with the MLS coming in and really trying to mold the next generation, and now the money's getting involved, I think we're further ahead. I think I think it's a numbers game. I think there are more high level players that are playing now, and I just think they're getting into better environments earlier, and I think that's the transition to us seeing this amazing crop of players get it done at the international level. I mean, it's unbelievable what some of these kids are doing right now. And I think it's a matter of time until we're everywhere doing that. I really do think it's a numbers game. And I think the scales have tipped in our favor.
How different for someone who has never seen Division III athletics? They're used to seeing what's on television, NCAA regionals, tournaments, championships, those kinds of things. For someone who's never seen Division III athletics, how different is it than, say, the D1 that everyone else is used to seeing, plastered on their cable television screens and things like that? How different is it these days?
I would say that there's a nuance in each sport, right? I would say that Division I football compared to Division III football is night and day. I would say Division I basketball, like the elite level, Division I basketball is night and day with Division III athletics. I would say soccer, there's not that much of a difference. Now, could we beat Wake Forest? No. I mean, the elite top 20 Division I teams, I think, are on a different level. And that's why you're seeing some of these kids go pro earlier, jump in and things like that. But I would say the mid-level Division I's and the top-end Division IIIs, there's not a lot of difference in our sport specifically. And I think, I would encourage everyone to go out and watch some of these games, because when you do see it live, it's pretty exciting. I mean, we've got guys, that are very athletic. I mean, our center backs are 6'4", 6'5", and they can play. We've got some strikers that that are a handful. I think, the guys that started, I mean, James can probably run a 4-3, 4-4, 40-yard dash. And, our other striker 6'2" and can run. And, those guys could play at the Division I level. Maybe they need to polish up a few things here and there, but that's my job as a coach and our job as a staff to continue to, improve those weaknesses that they may have that maybe allowed them to slip through the cracks. But I would say go check it out for yourself and see, the difference between the two levels. So holistically, I think sport to sport, it varies a lot, but I would like to think that as a, top 10 Division III program, we can compete with a lot of, lower end, Division I's.
What I love about it too is the fact that a lot of times when you see a talent gap, and across the board, probably like from player 1 to player 25 in the program, there's more talent at the D1 level. So if you were in a competitive game against a D1 team, a lot of times what you see teams do is play defensive, play cagey, get numbers behind the ball, sit, look for your opportunities, look for a set piece, and play that way. But where I think you have bridged the gap, and it's something that I don't see a ton of in D3, is that you don't dumb it down. You don't play a lesser way. You don't play a less positive way. You bridge the gap by recruiting talented kids and coaching them up, but also implementing an identity that, whether it's a freshman coming in, and like yesterday, for example, you played a lot of freshmen, and they played in the way that an Oglethorpe player should play. And you've bridged it by not making it defensive to try to get a result. You've bridged that gap because of the way that you coach your team. And I think that's a credit to you and the program, but I hope more young coaches choose that route and choose the route of good soccer versus just trying to grind out a result soccer.
Well, I think, I think you can learn from any experience, but I think, we want to promote the game. We want to promote student athletes' experience. And I think there are a lot of teams that are capable of playing a positive style. And, we try to put our money where our mouth is and do the things that we talk about. So when we say, to recruits, come watch us play, when they get there, we want it to be the same way that it was when we kind of sold you on what we're trying to do. And I think they enjoy it more. I mean, it's a lot more fun to be a midfielder and be involved in the creation and, linking play up, as opposed to, being involved in a ping pong game where the defenders launch it, and then you got to squeeze the gap and, win second balls. I mean, fighting is and playing hard is, can be gratifying, but I think there's also the other side of it was, being creators and being positive problem solvers, which I think people enjoy, being a part of that collective group, not just defending on one side of the ball.
It is fun to see your giant center backs be able to play. You walk out and you see two center backs at like 6'5". You don't expect them to be playing with the ball at their feet and comfortable doing it.
No, and I tell you what, it has a lot to do with how much talent's in Atlanta.
Yeah.
I mean, neither one of them were very highly recruited players, and I'm looking out there going, "Oh my gosh! I mean, how is this guy not gone already? I'll take both of them, and 3 times on Sunday." So, it's fun to see, but that's what we value. Maybe they didn't have this or that, but man, what an upside some of these kids have. It's exciting to work with them because their potential hasn't even been unlocked yet.
Is there something about the game? I guess this is bordering into the king for a day question for you. Is there something about the game that you think needs to be addressed that isn't something that needs to be tweaked or fixed when it comes to player development, access to the game itself, any of those things. If you were king for a day, one concern you think is out there for you at the forefront of your concerns should be addressed, and how would you do it?
I think we have to. That is a very loaded question, but I think at the root of all of it, I think we need to get rid of scores for anybody under U14. I mean, I think that probably would solve quite a bit of it. So I think we have to go, right down to under 14 under and just get rid of all scores. The whether you want to say it's American, whether you want to say it's, the competing factor. And we've got to save parents from themselves of worrying about this league or that league. I mean, I think we've got to do away with all of it. 14 and under. And I think at that age, you can start to talk about, how to compete and how to win and those types of things. But if we're focused on those things and not about somebody's left foot or right foot or making the extra pass, there's my Ted Lasso reference, nothing
wrong with that.
The creativity, if we're worried about those types of things at the earliest ages, at the most important part of a player's DNA, we're losing the plot. And that's what I would do, because I think we would accelerate our talent pool and create more, Gio Reynas and things like that if we would just get rid of that at the earliest ages.
I like that. And that's not a way that I'd actually thought of solving the problem. I think, we've talked about that kind of problem for a while where it becomes, my U10 team is nationally ranked, like that means something, and we get into this stuff where then kids start jumping around and it's all about winning games at U10 rather than doing the things you just mentioned, like developing your off foot, knowing how to receive a ball, knowing how to deliver the right pass, those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's horrifying what's happened. I mean, I'm not going to name names, but I mean, there are ranking systems for under 9 and under 10 teams.
Crazy.
They are the ways that you get in certain tournaments, and you drive, 1,000 miles to play a different U10 team because on paper, these teams are supposedly the best in the state. I mean, it's the most, it's horrifying in a lot of ways, and then I think people get caught up in this system, and then we're fighting ourselves. And I think somebody's, with business tied into it and the federation and all there's so many different layers to this that we're not going to unpack it right now. But I think that's the quickest way to do it, because all of it's stupid to rank players that are, that who knows what's going to happen, but these systematic problems are working against our development. And I just wish somebody would just some way, somehow say, these things don't matter. You guys need to get your act together if you want to continue this upward trend that you guys have right now, as far as soccer development in this country, because we have come a long way. We are doing a lot of great things, but these dumb things are, if we really want to, go beyond it, you can't worry about, the leading goal scorer in the 11U league, getting a competitive game guy by going to Fort Lauderdale to play the next U11 number 1 ranked team in the country. It's crazy.
Hopefully we can be part of the solution. Hopefully we can keep shouting this stuff out. It's important too, because, if you don't have kids who are playing in youth soccer, you might not know these elements and how it affects players who develop to play for your favorite team in this country or play for the national team or a youth national team. It is all interrelated, and it's fun to dig into the big picture level of this at times. And I think you having your experience and digging into this from being a player, from being a college coach, from being a youth club coach, an administrator, all of those elements, you can see some of the big picture things. And I've always appreciated your perspective on it. It's something that we need to keep shouting out. We just need to force to try to get those changes. And Bernd, for example, one of our listeners said that he's pretty sure Germany has done what you just said about the scores, and he thinks it was at the U13 level is where they drew the line. But they stopped doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, they get it that they are so far ahead in some regards, and whether it's U13 or 14 or 12 or whatever it is, we've got to get down to the fact that it's about players' technique, it's about players' love for the game, and not ruining them. Because they what happens is the kids start to play into it as well about, well, this team is a division higher, and you're like, man. Go watch, the German U14, top leagues, and you'll see that we are all way off the mark. But again, I mean, that's my king for the day, problem solving. But I mean, we are doing so many, amazing things. We've just got to continue to push the envelope and try to eradicate some of these things that are holding us back. But we'll continue to try to hammer home what the game can be. Going back to the philosophy question, is because it is amazingly beautiful. It is amazingly creative, and what a great approach for young people to try to be the best they can be, as opposed to getting a result off somebody else's failure.
We will keep digging into this with you, and we'll keep trying to force some change. But this was really good for, I think, going very big picture on where kind of American soccer is, where American soccer coaching is, and from somebody who gets it, and I think is trying to be part of that change. So, John, thanks for the time. I really appreciate it, and thanks for going complete soccer and psychology nerd with us a little bit today, too. I didn't see that one coming.
No, I could do this all day. You guys are awesome. Keep up the great work. I'll be on anytime you guys ask.
Awesome. Thanks, John. Thanks for the time this morning.
Thanks, Coach.
Have a great day.
You too. John Aiken from Oglethorpe University. Make sure you are keeping up with the Stormy Petrels. Games on the road, the rest of the conference schedule. It's kind of, a truncated spring where the way the SAA schedule got sorted out is they had 3 dates at home, and then they went on the road for 3. So they're about to start on the road for 3 this weekend against Barry, which is always a big game. Jason Nix asks, what's a petrel? Well, actually, it's a petrel, but because of, I think, wanting to make it rhyme, they say it differently at Oglethorpe. I had to learn that. I was about to call them the Stormy Petrels, but it's the Stormy Petrels.
Yes, Stormy Petrels.
Petey, the Stormy Petrel, is the mascot.
Yeah, it took me a while with my early days in Division III basketball, when Oglethorpe would play Emory, and you're getting all of the local rivalries. You mentioned Barry as another one, where all of the local D3s would play each other, and the student bodies would just all hop in cars and they play against each other. Mm-hmm. The gag was, Stormy. It's a petrel, no, Stormy Petrel. So Pete the Petrel.
It's Petey.
Petey the Petrel.
Petey the Stormy Petrel.
Yeah. Tube-nosed seabirds in the bird order Procellariformes.
There you go, John, with the knowledge for you. But go Petrels with one E, .com is the website, and you can watch some of John Aiken's teams. I call their games because I enjoy watching them play. It's good soccer, and like John said, I mean, you're recruiting players that, for whatever reason, aren't being seen. And I mean, he's got some very, very talented players. He always does. And he's got some guys that should have gotten looks at bigger schools. And he's got some guys that are developing into really, really good players. And they play, again, they play good soccer, and they try to do it the right way. And I think that's the key for me. I enjoy calling the games, and that's why I like spending my time calling those games. Yeah. So highly recommended. GoPetrels.com. 3 games left. They could have the conference tournament later in June if they end up winning the regular season again. It's just a conference schedule. There's no D3 tournament this year, but it's weird. Making the best of it, and back in the fall, and hopefully fans are available to come out in the fall. And it is, if you have kids who play, this is a team that's very accessible, and you can come out and watch and be really close. And if your child is a holding midfielder, for example, you can watch how these holding midfielders play up close, because the basics of the way that Oglethorpe plays, and this is the important element for me, and this is going back to the big picture philosophy question that we started with about the U.S. men's national team, the basics of the way that Oglethorpe plays are the same as Atlanta United, are the same as Greg Berhalter, are the same as Pep Guardiola, are the same as Marcelo Bielsa. Every manager has their own spin on those basics. But those basics in philosophy of we will have the ball, we will create our opportunities with the ball going forward. When we lose the ball, we want to win it back as fast as possible. All of those basics are consistent. And there's no reason why you can't do that at a D3 college level. There's no reason why your U16 team can't play that way. There's no reason why a national team can't play that way. If a D3 college team that had 3 weeks of preseason wearing masks to train can play in a positive way, there's no reason why an Olympic qualifying team can't get to that point. And that is a frustrating thing when you watch the way the game goes and you don't see the changes along the line. And this was something, for example, as Jarrett Smith is back with us, Jarrett_Smith is back with us if you follow him on the Twitters or on Instagram. This is something that you can stay true to the philosophy and make changes tactically. And it's a very important distinction that we lose in this country far too often. Tactics are not philosophy. Philosophy is not tactics. You can play with 2 up top and still play possession. You can play with 3 in the back and still play possession. You can play 4-3-3 and still play possession. You can play 2 holding midfielders or 1 and still play possession. Those changes change things about the way the team functions. They change things about the layout, but they don't have to change the philosophy. The philosophy is the number one thing here. And that's something that I think Greg Berhalter is doing correctly. I think it's something that the Federation is doing correctly. It's good. The tactics have to be better in games, especially with your changes in game, but also implementing the philosophy in a tactical setup to deal with the opponent that you are facing. Those are the things that have to get better. And those are the things that I think we saw really hurt the US U23s. And there's not a valid excuse why, outside of the fact that you had a failure at the coaching level and it wasn't as good as it needed to be.
Yeah, bottom line. It was really good to hear from John this morning on the variety of things when it came to philosophy and all of those and how it's implemented in the structure. And he's one of the guys that does it the right way. And when you get to hear his breakdown of how he approaches things and how he relates to today's student athlete, and you can sit there and have that as a baseline of knowledge of someone that you can listen to, that you can learn from, and apply it to all of the other folks that you listen to when it comes to finding out what you do. It's really cool to have a guy like John that you can have as a sounding board for a situation like this. Jarrett, with what we heard from John and what we heard from Bart, what else is on your mind this morning, sir?
Well, I'm sure I've covered a lot of it because a lot of it for me was going over U23 disappointments, frustrations of the Euro. How much did y'all get into meaningless warm-up games?
We really haven't. Like I said, I mean, it's been
morning, then.
Yeah. I mean, it's been literally we talked to John for a half an hour and talked to Bart, and so the floor is yours, sir. What's on your mind?
I don't really have anything. I don't really have a manifesto lined up for this morning. I still have my complaints about the way things, went with the U23s, with the Euros, as I talked about at the top of the show before, Bart jumped in and then John. I guess for me, because if you haven't really touched on, Atlanta United plays over the weekend against Birmingham, don't worry. about the scores. Don't worry about trying to pick out which one might be your starting lineup. There was a good mix of guys on both teams. I don't think that final tally is really going to drive anyone inside to drink or not drink either way. So at this point, you're getting ready for CONCACAF Champions League, and you're just trying to get live action against guys who you aren't really familiar with.
Right.
You're not facing the same guys every day in training. So you wanted to go over to Birmingham. You wanted to play, and you wanted to play against people who, might hit back a little harder. You want to play against people you're not seeing every day in practice, see something a little bit differently, have some intensity. I'm not mad about the conditions. I personally like the idea of training when conditions aren't great, especially with younger guys. I can see what – I know you want to see it in good conditions to see what they can do, but I like the idea a lot of times of seeing them in adverse conditions to see how they adjust, because you're not always going to play when it's 75 degrees and sunny.
I love when the argument comes up about like American soccer players. I think somebody tweeted this. I wish I could remember who it was to give him credit. I think it was Keith Costigan, so I'm going to give Keith credit for it. So people say that American players aren't good enough because they have all these great facilities to play with and they don't have to deal with adversity. But then inside of American soccer, you have people complaining about the quality of the facilities. Have you ever looked at players who develop in Honduras or in Costa Rica, and you might not have facilities with much grass on the field, and it doesn't seem to really affect it. You go to Brazil, and it doesn't seem to really affect it. It's not that. So much of it is personal. So much of it is the coaching. So much of it is the individuals that are involved. And if the people doing it aren't doing it the right way, it doesn't matter if they have a perfect field with brand new soccer balls and brand new equipment. None of that matters. It's very weird. Okay, we promised that John would give us his notes from the Atlanta United Birmingham match yesterday. Are they readable? Yeah, he took notes. Are they readable?
Oh, no.
Right here.
Did they get rained on?
That doesn't tell me if they're readable. That just tells me they make noise.
That just tells me it's a sheet of paper.
Yeah, it's a sheet of paper.
Did they get rained on?
No, they did not.
Okay, that's good. Are you able to read them?
That is the rub in all of this, because I ended up taking a legal pad into BBVA Field, and so I had my phone where I was tweeting at the end of each game.
Oh, also, Jason Nix with a question, and I didn't understand this either from your tweets. What was your parking problem?
Oh, okay. So let's just start at the beginning.
Yes.
All right. So to park in and around BBVA Field in Birmingham, they suggest that you download an app and you can pay for it electronically, and then they send you a barcode, and you flash the barcode, you scan the barcode, you go into where you paid to park. Apparently, the only barcode that didn't work in scanning folks to let them into where I paid to park was mine.
Only one. Nobody else had this problem.
Everybody else, when I wandered up, either had a piece of paper that they handed to the guy saying, "Hey, I'm parking here," or guy took out his scanner, went doink, you hear the noise, everybody goes through. Me, the guy rebooted his phone 3 separate times, couldn't get the barcode to register on his phone. And so he tells me, okay, just go over there, and I'm going to call my boss, go over there, and we'll figure something out. And so I got to the parking structure 15 minutes before the game was supposed to start. I loitered for quite some time in an illegal parking position. Then after the line that let everybody in,
facilities for that, big man.
No, they apparently did not.
No, I don't think you did, John, because as somebody else has said, I DM'd him, don't blame the technology, blame the user, John.
Okay, that's fine. That wouldn't be the first time. But yeah, so a guy comes up to my window, and I roll it down, and he says, I just called my boss. He just said to go on a park after waiting for 15 minutes. So
good times.
Yeah. So I got into the facility about 5 minutes into match number 1.
Okay, so you missed the first 5 minutes of 70.
Yes.
What did you see in match number 1?
Machop Scholl's going to be a problem. He continues to be. Well, first thing, I'll tell you this.
Oh, you saw something first.
I saw something first. The way that BBVA Field drains from the crown creates problems in, say, the 5 to 7 yards closest to each touchline.
That would make sense.
So, yeah.
If you've been on a field with a crown, it's at its highest point, and it's not huge unless it was the old Adams Stadium where it was. Its highest point's in the middle, so the water drains to the sides. Yeah. That's how it works. But if it stops draining before it gets off the field, that's a problem.
Yes, and so the 5 to 7, probably 5 yards to 7 yards from the touchline in, it was a slog for game number 1. It was a little better for game number 2, but knowing how Gabriel Heinze wants folks to be as wide as possible on the wings, trying to get any kind of momentum, any kind of speed without wiping out, turned out to be things that the players had to keep in mind in this particular match. Machop Chol had a wipeout going down the left-hand side as he was getting up ahead of steam. Jürgen Dahm had a wipeout at one point as he was heading down the right-hand side, so they had to kind of compress things a little bit when it came to what they wanted to do offensively, and they kind of had to get some high-stepping done at points as well.
High-stepping?
Yeah, just high. You know how you're just what?
Are you telling me this is like the track is, or this is the field was basically like the Bristol dirt track attempt that's going to happen today?
Yeah, starting at noon.
They're not high-stepping in cars. How was Deion Sanders involved in this game, John?
Well, it was very, very light, high-stepping, trying to get any kind of momentum and speed.
So
going,
not
so you
full prime time.
Yeah, not full prime time, but it was there was some pitter pattering and some high stepping going on, trying to, just so you wouldn't wipe out.
Pattering and high.
What? You've never seen? So have you ever seen the thing where a running back or wide receiver is in the open field and they do like the hesitation step and they kind of like the 1-2 high step like Sweetness used to do?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. That I think is what John's getting at. Not the Deion high step, but like the quick tap high steps.
Yeah. It's just like it's quick. It was quick tapping just so you wouldn't end up wiping out. But Machop is going to continue to be a problem.
Okay.
But yeah, the pitch to me in the first game, I was locked into that, and it was kind of handicapping what you wanted to do. You saw Barco. I mean, you saw Barco was the fulcrum for a lot of what they wanted to do. Rios Novo was in net in the first game. And, he was very, very aggressive, had a very short memory, which, is a good thing, where there was one outlet where he tried to get a possession started and he hit it right to a Birmingham player. The defense comes back and, stops that from turning into something that was a complete negative. But once again, it didn't deter Rocco Rios Novo from continuing to do that in future opportunities. So just one bad mistake, blocked it out. Continued to be aggressive, was solid in net in his 70 minutes. You saw instances where George Bello would come in, he would cut inside from his wing position, he would go and make runs. You had a lot of guys. Miles Robinson had there were runs where they would see space and they would work with the ball at their feet and they would see gaps and they would just go ahead and go. So, a lot of folks were looking at Miles and the fans were sitting there and cheering him on when he had possession of the ball as he's working his way. And he had a lot of room at one particular instance. And so it was, like I said, you're seeing players from the wings cutting inside, filling in gaps, working their way forward. Just stuff that we're anticipating seeing, but you saw it from a lot of different guys. George Campbell, once again, continued to impress at the back, hitting the big diagonal when he had the chances to do that. So there were a lot of different guys in game one that were part and parcel to what I saw. There weren't any goals, but that really wasn't the point.
Well, goals are always the point. First of all,
yeah. I mean, I'm looking at it as trying to.
No, goals are the point. No.
Right.
John, there's no question about when you're going to play this game. Goals are the point. The score in this case is not the point. The result is not the point. But scoring goals, yes, it's a good thing.
Well, I was thinking at it from the scoring.
But that's very different. Were they creating chances?
Yes, they were creating chances.
That's the number one.
There were posts
thing
that were hit. And the post helped out Matt Van Oekel a lot.
In the first 70 minutes. This is where we still are? Okay. So let me try to understand, because obviously I was not there. And people are really enjoying your summary of this game, by the way.
Cool.
Yeah, something like that. So, because I've seen,
beautiful.
I know. I'm just trying to make sure I understand because I've seen different takes here. So, it was choppy, fair.
Yes.
Some of that's down to the conditions of the field, fair.
Fair.
But Atlanta created chances.
Fair. Yes.
Did they create more chances than Birmingham?
Yes.
Did Birmingham pretty much sit back and defend? Or did they come out and play in the first 70?
They came out and played. Junior Flemings was up top, and you got to see what he was all about.
Okay, so they had some play, but Atlanta had more of the play.
Yes.
And Atlanta created chances.
Yes.
Okay.
Jurgen Damm had a pretty lift over Matt Van Oekel, and you kind of got to see the philosophical difference in goalkeeping, where there were instances where in game one, Rocco Rios Novo would come out and be aggressive and make sure that play would start back quickly, going back the other way. Matt Van Oekel got caught in between ideas when Jurgen Damm was charging at him at one point. Damm tried to lift it over the top of him because Van Oekel got caught. Should I be aggressive and go after it, or should I lay back and try to defend? And so it was an interesting dichotomy with the two goalkeepers.
Okay. So Jurgen Damm tried to chip Matt Van Oekel?
Yeah. Tried to chip over Van Oekel at one point, yeah.
Okay, just checking. Shots on goal, shots taken. Do you have any stats? You're being asked?
I think it was 5. It was like 5-3 shots on goal. Atlanta United.
5-3 shots on goal.
Yes.
Shots total.
And once again, I'm going off of the scoreboard. I think it was 7. I think it was 7 for Atlanta shots, 5 on goal, and I think it was shots were equal as shots on goal for Birmingham in the first game.
I don't understand any of that, but okay. What was the XG? Alex Bassine wants to know.
Good luck with me trying to figure out an XG, Alex.
Yeah, that involves too
Alex.
much math.
That takes a formula.
Yeah, we've seen how
that takes a formula.
work.
We don't do those here.
We've seen that. Shiva asked, "What do you think of Damm?" I guess Doug Robertson said that he held on to the ball too long before he picked a pass. What do you think of Jurgen Damm yesterday?
I liked what I saw out of Jurgen Damm, despite where he was positioned and what he was trying to work with on the pitch. I mean, it was
despite where he was positioned when it came to the actual condition of the turf, is what you're talking about. The grass.
I mean, he's supposed to be as wide on the right-hand side as humanly possible. Being as wide as humanly possible on the right-hand side put him in the middle of the right lake of BBVA Field. So he had to come inside. Like I said, he had to come inside from what you would have liked to have seen by about 5 yards. But no, I thought that, and this was one of the things that I enjoyed watching that was also a carryover into game number 2 was the dribbling ability and the speed down the wings. We saw it with Machope down the left in game 1. We saw it with the dribbling ability and going past folks in with Jurgen Damm. I mentioned the one instance where he tried to chip it over Van Oekel. But no, the speed that you see from a guy like Jurgen Damm at 100%, the speed that you see from Machope Chol, the speed that you saw in game 2 with dribbling and passing, with Jake Mulroney and Brooks Lennon in combination down the right-hand side in game number 2. I was perfectly fine with what Jurgen Damm was doing out there.
Okay, what did you take away from game number 2?
Well, first off, it was the combinations that we saw from Brooks Lennon and Jake Mulroney that just ludicrous speed kills, and it was a fun watch. The pitch was a little drier on the edges, and so you could see a little bit more of what you were looking for. It wasn't completely dry, but you didn't have to do as much pitter-pattering as we did in game number 1. But seeing Brooks and Jake work in concert down the right-hand side was fun.
Pitter-pattering. What else did you take away from game number 2?
I liked what I saw out of Josh Bauer, once again, working at the back, but, at the same time, not afraid to hit that big diagonal, not afraid to jump into play when he had the opportunities to. Let's see. Guy who put in a lot of miles was Emerson Heineman. A lot of guys actually put in a lot of miles, to be honest. But there'd be times where you would see Heineman who would drop all the way back to get things started. offensively for Atlanta United, but then he'd be almost in a striker position at points because that was where the game dictated, where you're filling in the space. That was where he would end up. There's Brooks Lennon, Brad Gazan, once again, aggressive coming out and being that sweeper keeper, he'd be out 25, 35 yards from net at times trying to get things done. Sosa, the only thing missing at one point for Santi Sosa was the fife and the drum. He had a clash of heads and got the physio working with the LGP black wrap to make sure that everything was secured with the clash of heads. But
I thought he had a bloody nose. Did he have a bloody nose?
I didn't see any blood from the nose, but the wrap was up here like a headband.
Okay. There was confusion on that. Got it.
But and then there was a goal off a deflection. I liked what I saw with Lisandro Lopez trying to create. He in the post had an intimate conversation with one of his possessions.
An entanglement?
Not an entanglement. No, he was trying to put it into the net, and the ball ended up hitting the post instead of going into the net. So once again, the post and Atlanta United became good friends again.
How many times did Atlanta hit the post?
Let's see. I want to say it was 2 in game number 2, if memory serves.
That's a lot. Did Atlanta United create chances in game number 2?
Yes, they did, especially in transition. And it was lightning quick at times when they would get the ball from Birmingham and then turn it around, and you would see just lightning quick transitions down to the other end.
Did they create more chances in game number 2 than game number 1?
I think it was about the same if memory serves.
Fine.
But there were less chances for Birmingham in game number 2 than there were in game number 1.
Okay. All right. So I think we understand how the training exercise went in broad strokes. Where did
we?
Yeah, we're guessing, Jarrett. It's the best we can do. Abby wants to know where you sat.
Stood in the back of the general admission section. So I was the guy wearing the SDH hoodie standing in the back row of the GAs next to La Doce.
Okay. What did you eat?
Nothing.
You ate nothing all day?
No. I mean, I had... God, what did I have? I had...
I think that question is what did he eat at the game, so...
I know. We're continuing to progress. So you ate nothing at the stadium. You did not partake in the concessions.
Because it was like $12 for a grilled cheese sandwich from one of the food trucks, and I wasn't going to do that.
Yeah, that's a little high. So what did you have on your trip?
Driving home, I stopped in Pell City at the Arby's and got a sandwich that they put entirely too much stuff on that I didn't want, and so I spent like 10 minutes wiping
put stuff on the sandwich at Arby's. Like what stuff, John?
I wanted just a basic double roast beef sandwich where I could put the horsey sauce on it and just do it the way that I want.
You wanted roast beef and bread.
Yeah, I wanted roast beef and bread, so I could put the horsey sauce. I mean the horsey sauce on the roast beef. Mm-hmm. So because you don't want, when you're driving, you don't want the sandwich to be too messy.
Sure.
Because you're spilling it all over the place.
Sure.
And so there's a
But what did they put on the roast beef sandwich that they have that you get with pretty much roast beef and bread? I think they might put Arby's sauce on it to begin with.
They didn't do that. They put they gave me the one that had like the funky cheese sauce on it, and they gave me the onion roll as opposed to the basic roll.
Arby's pretty much always does the onion roll, John. Well, no, they don't. They do some sandwiches. So you got a beef and cheddar, is what you're saying?
Yeah, which I didn't want.
Did you order a beef and cheddar?
I said a double roast beef. Period. That's all I wanted.
You didn't mention the word cheddar.
Nope.
But you got a beef and cheddar.
Got a beef and cheddar. Yeah.
Okay, so that sounds like a mistake was made by the drive-through crew. I'm assuming it was a drive-through.
That is true, and I spent like 10 minutes trying to wipe as much of the cheddar off of the sandwich as possible.
Well, that's just insulting. But anyway. Okay. Any other travel mishaps?
Let's see. Other than the garage at UAB and the sandwich, it's like when I left on Saturday, no real travel mishaps. Just, it's good to go out. It was good to go out to Birmingham. Once again, it was a nice crowd, especially in the general admission section. And, so it's good to see folks in stands. Good to see the 17s out there, and good to see Michael Bucklew, who came in and said hello. We had a conversation while we were there. But yeah, it was good to see 17s make the trip, and there were a lot of 17s that did make the trip in the general admission section.
Kefsey wants an explanation on the Miles Robinson, J.J. Williams incident that happened.
Oh, just To me, it was they were both going up, and it was just like a clash of heads. And Miles went down for a little bit. JJ went down for a little less. Miles got looked at by the physios and sat him up, and then they were both off for a couple of minutes, and then they were allowed back on. So nothing too serious.
How is Joseph looking on a scale of 1 to 100? Jason Nix asks.
You're still trying to. For me, he looked like he was the focus. You see, now this is going to be kind of an odd number because he was one of the focuses of the Legion defense, and so it's when you're trying to make sure that Joseph doesn't get anything offensively and doesn't get anything started. They're clamping down on him. You're seeing two guys and sometimes, triangle around him. So he's not getting the ball. Barco is already starting. I think it was 3 or 4 instances where Ezequiel Barco got chopped down and got a couple of whistles. There weren't any cards that were shown in this.
It's a training exercise. You don't really need to use cards generally.
But there were a couple of pretty nasty challenges that were put in with Barco. So I think Barco was up to 4 with challenges where he was knocked off his feet by Birmingham folks.
Okay. Describe horsey sauce to Abby.
Horseradish sauce? That's basically what it is.
Arby's horsey sauce, yes.
Yeah, Arby's horsey sauce is horseradish. It's good for clearing out your nose when you need to.
Okay. I'm actually surprised that you put that on the sandwich. I didn't expect that one coming.
Well, the Arby's sauce is messier.
They're very different, is the point.
Yeah,
you're usually terrified of spice.
I am a fan of barbecue sauce, and I'm a fan of Arby's sauce, no question. But if you put Arby's sauce on a sandwich and you're driving,
no, of course,
there is a higher ratio possibility of spilling the Arby's sauce all over yourself as there is the horsey sauce.
That's all fine. That's all fine. I was just surprised that you actually put something that was kind of spicy on your sandwich. I didn't see that.
Well, like I said, it cleans out the sinuses a little bit. Needed that to happen.
Okay, fair enough. Let's see. Was there any other questions for you about this? Byrne thought it was encouraging that they're letting Joseph play on a bad or wet pitch. I would agree with that. Yeah, I mean, he didn't look hesitant or anything like that, John?
No hesitancy.
Omen Guro was there, said Joseph's timing was a bit off. He did have some decent chances. A couple of them were point blank. You got to kind of play through that, so that's okay. I mean, I'm not worried about sharpness. I'm more worried about stuff like what Byrne said, and does he look like he's moving well? Are there concerns about the quality of the pitch? You're going to hold him out. It looks like he's played in all of the training exercises this week, so that's all pointing in the right direction. That all sounds pretty good.
Yep.
Let's see. Mazzano says, your condiments while driving are based on viscosity.
Yes, that is true.
Yeah.
Absolutely true, because you want to make sure that you're in control of your environment. And, I mean, you don't want any kind of thermal breakdown of your condiments while you're on the road to create a mess in a car that you just bought. So that would be bad form.
Okay. So we have promised Q&A, basically. Oh, and Omagura said Lissandro hit the woodwork a couple of times on a couple of different fast breaks. So, yes, he did have an entanglement with the posts, unfortunately.
I thought that you were mentioning him specifically and not the ball interacting with said post.
No. It's a phrase. Go look it up. Jada Pinkett Smith, go look it up. He had a relationship with the post.
Yes, he did.
Okay. So Q&A, Jarrett's here too. This can be USU 23s. This can be big picture U.S. men's national team. This can be Atlanta United. This can be whatever you want. On the Twitch pitch, I am going to start from here. So if you have questions, throw them in. Twitter, I know we have some stuff from yesterday and maybe from the weekend at large. So, John, if you want to get us caught up on Twitter while the feed fills on the Twitch pitch.
All right, so let me start with Nathan. Nathan Pugh early this morning says, bigger fish to fry this morning as long as at OSG Nelson isn't doing the frying.
Yeah, that's not happening.
But weekend draw and group of death aside, I'm putting an 8-pack of Kroger brand cran grape plastic bottled juice boxes, the 8-ounce kind, on Portugal to repeat at the Euros.
I don't think I'm on board with that. Although I don't really know what direction I'm going to go with the Euros. That's an interesting one. Let's take a quick look at this because we do know the draw and we do know where things stand with this tournament. That will be the summer. We do know basically like who the top seeds are, et cetera, et cetera. Belgium, Italy, England, Germany, Spain, and Ukraine were all in pot 1. France was in pot 2, along with Poland, Switzerland, Croatia, Netherlands, Russia. That would be your top 12 in terms of the draw and favorites and such. Based off what I have seen, and I have not started formulating picks here, Group F is obscene with Germany, France, Portugal, and Hungary. That's really disgusting and not safe for work. Group D is not exactly pleasant with England, Croatia, Scotland, and the Czech Republic. The Dutch and Ukraine are in Group C. Austria is there too, which could be a little bit of a spoiler. Group A, Turkey and Italy with Wales and Switzerland. That's not exactly a pleasant group either. Belgium in Group B should be okay, I think, with Denmark, Finland, and Russia. Group E, Spain, who's not exactly lighting it up, although they did win at Georgia in a very competitive game with 15,000 in the stands. Spain, Sweden, Poland, and Slovakia, and now Bayern are waiting to see if Lewandowski will be available for this weekend. He might not be. He will not play against England in World Cup qualification this week. That's why sometimes releasing players can be a bit of a question, and when you have the opportunity to not release players, maybe this is why you don't do it. Anyway, in a World Cup qualifier, you don't have that choice, but players get injured. Okay. So my favorite based off the draw, I will go with Belgium. I think this is their time, and this is the time that they should win the Euros. I don't know if they do, because they haven't actually won the thing yet. They haven't actually won with this golden generation, but it feels like this is as good of a time as any. So I will pick Belgium as a very early favorite.
Sounds good to me. Jarrett, what do you think?
I'm inclined to think whoever comes out of that death group is going to be wielding enough weaponry and survival skills to win the rest of the thing. Give me France on doing the World Cup Euro back-to-back thing.
Okay, that's not common. That's tough to do. They absolutely could.
I do want to believe in Belgium, but I also have like this sneaking feeling of Belgium being the country right now who is, man, they were in a golden generation. What'd they do with it? They made a quarterfinal of the World Cup.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm sorry. I think they made a semifinal.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you. I'm not 100% bought in, but at the moment, that's where my head's at. That could change.
And that's the thing is, I don't disagree. I think it's a sneaky pick because I think they're talented enough to do it. I just don't know if they can.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Mentality. I mean, you got to show you can actually win these things, and they haven't yet. So there's going to be questions. I think it's a pretty wide open tournament. It should be a really fun tournament to watch this summer. I'm looking forward to it. What's next on the Twitters?
Question from Cuppers.
Okay.
And I'm trying to track down the information as we speak. He wants to know, what does Nike pay for their national team deal versus Adidas for the MLS deal?
Adidas for the MLS deal, I know it's over 100 per year. I want to say it's in the 125 plus region per year. I don't know the Nike deal. And it's two kind of differently structured things. So, Nike's getting the national teams. I don't know every component of what they're getting. I'm not getting into like how many commercials they get during broadcasts and stuff like that. Nike's getting national teams, men and women and youth on both sides. Adidas is getting every MLS team and the academies. It's two very different things. I don't know if it's really a good like-for-like comparison.
Because back in 2013, there was the new 9-year deal that came to 2022, and then something goes from there. And I think it was like at 120 back in
the Adidas
the
one's not
deal.
too much of a concern. What's the Nike deal? You've been able to find that?
It's back in 2013. I'm trying to see the old one. It's like they're giving me all the old information. They're not giving me the new information.
Give us a starting point. What are you seeing on Nike?
2013, 120.
Okay, so that's Nike. Okay, so they're in the same ballpark.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know the very specifics, and it's two very different structured deals, so that's where it stands.
Okay, so Tafka is now this is Tafka's phrasing, so you'll have to. This is Tafka. This is Tafka talking and tweeting.
Wait a minute. Let me get ready for this. Hold on.
I won't be listening in tomorrow. I'm sorry, I just can't. I'm barely a shade less furious than I was in 2017. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to discuss it. I want to hear that Christ has been relieved of his duties in USMNT by 9 a.m. this morning. I want every player to go back to their club and train as if their life depended on it, because what they showed today, as he wrote it yesterday, was absolute garbage in all caps. I saw no urgency, no off-the-ball movement, no creativity, no intensity. Christ might be a terrible coach, but mentality is on the players.
Mentality's on both. The players have a role in it. They absolutely do. It's not purely, urgency is not purely on the coach. It's not purely on the players. It is on both. Christ, I think, was going to be done with this program whenever the cycle was done, and it's done. So, I mean, it's not a full-time gig. Like that's one big difference here, and it's something that Paul Kennedy of Soccer America pointed out. Mexico played over 20 games with a U23 team preparing for this event over time. The U.S. played 2. The U.S. takes the U23 group like it is a all-star team, essentially, at the end of a season, as opposed to an age group program. They do it differently with the U20s, and the U20s have been to 3 straight U20 World Cup quarterfinals, and they won the last 2 CONCACAF U20 championships. They haven't had a problem qualifying for the U20 World Cup. They've been winning the CONCACAF qualification event. Why that's happened in the last 2 cycles, in 17 and 19, for the U20 program, but then those players go to this group and can't win a semifinal, is a question. You know, is Tab Ramos doing something different than what Jason Christ did? You have had some changes in the program. All those things are true, absolutely. But you had success at the U20 level. What changed at the U23? This is not a full-time program. That's one thing that I think U.S. Soccer is going to need to make a change. And you've got plenty of teams in this region that, if you want to call it a USB team, if you want to say it's the US U23s playing the Cayman Islands or whoever. Cayman Islands got to get their coronavirus testing sorted out here first. That's why the game with Canada was postponed till today. That's a whole different topic. But if you want to play games in this region and play them outside of MLS competition and get these guys more time, you can absolutely do it. You need to structure it. If that's an issue, you need to do it. There's not an excuse why Mexico is playing games at the U23, then you're not. And they're playing in tournaments, all over the world. They're taking a U23 team to it to go play. Now, you are going to have to walk a line. And this is something that has come up a lot over the last few hours since this game, and it came up a lot before. Mexican Federation is run by the Mexican clubs. They structure things to allow their players who are playing domestically to go. They also don't let them go at the expense of a CONCACAF Champions League situation. And yes, the Mexican players in Mexico were going to have a different quarantine situation than American players coming back from Mexico into MLS. That needs to be understood here. That was a big issue with why Atlanta, and maybe Portland, although we don't know why Eric Williamson and Jeremy Abobasi were not part of this group. We don't know why they weren't. If they just weren't picked, then that's a big question for who was picking the roster. If they were told that they couldn't play, then why is one team being identified as a problem and others aren't? And also, then the flip side comes. You can't say that the CONCACAF Champions League is the most important thing for MLS if you're then saying that MLS should let players go in the preparation for CONCACAF Champions League. And if the U.S. needs to lobby harder at the CONCACAF level for the timing of these events, then they need to lobby harder. Because, for example, the South American Olympic qualifying tournament was played in January, early February of 2020, so they got it done before the pandemic. But it was done earlier in the calendar than the CONCACAF one was structured for last year and this year. Why? Maybe so those players would not be interfered with when it came to Copa Libertadores or Copa Sudamericana. Just a thought. Does the U.S. Federation and the people involved from the United States in CONCACAF need to work harder to get these games scheduled better for their domestic league that they are trying to boost up? Yes, they 100% do. That needs to change. Because I do not think, if Portland said no on Williamson and Ebobisse, if Atlanta United said no, and now we know how that one played out, they said no on 3 of your 4 starters on your back line because they are preparing for CONCACAF Champions League, and we'll walk through it. Okay, they would have played. Maybe you work out a deal. Maybe you work out a deal where if you win the semifinal, the players leave the group then. So they would have left the group last night. They would have come back to the United States. They would have had a 7-day quarantine period coming back in. What does that take you to? Next Sunday, maybe next Monday. When do you play Alajuelense? Tuesday. How do you prepare for a game when you don't have those guys in an international match? You can't, especially 3 of your 4 on the back line. Were all 3 going to go to the final roster? We don't know. But that's a big part of your preparation for an international match. It's not that Atlanta did something wrong, and I think anybody trying to point that out about the clubs, then go ask Barcelona why Conrad de la Fuente was not part of this. Oh, did the U.S. Federation ask? We don't know. Maybe Barcelona said no. We don't know. He was part of the preliminary roster. Were there questions had about anybody else? Brendan Aronson was part of the preliminary roster. Did Red Bull Salzburg said no, he can't go to that, but he can go to play for the senior national team in these games in Europe? Did that happen? We don't know. So this piling on MLS clubs is so wrong and so misplaced because the talent was good enough to win. There are far bigger questions than Miles Robinson being part of this back line for the US U23s or George Bello or Brooks Lennon. There are far bigger questions. Where was Frankie Amaya? Where was Gianluca Busio? Where was another forward who could actually put the ball in the back of the net? Where were those things? Oh, they were on the preliminary roster but not picked. Why weren't they picked? And none of that matters because you had a good enough team to win yesterday, and you didn't. There are a lot of layers to it, but this idea that things were wrong because 3 players from Atlanta were not there, and it's all on them. Yes, I'm biased. Of course, you guys know that. But tell me what's wrong about a team prioritizing their competition when this tournament should not be played in this time of the year. It shouldn't have been scheduled for this in 2020. It shouldn't be played this time in 2021. It should be for everybody's benefit, and yes, MLS would be included in this, in January. That's when it should be. That would be at the beginning of seasons for Liga MX, for the Primera División in Costa Rica and in Honduras and in Guatemala. It would be at the beginning of those seasons. Teams would not have as many problems with those players going away. You could make it work then. Funny that CONMEBOL can and CONCACAF can't. If MLS and U.S. Soccer need to lobby harder, because this idea that MLS is running U.S. Soccer is ludicrous because of this. It's this. This idea that this is an MLS problem is ludicrous because of stuff like this. It's wrong. The tournament should be earlier in the year. The tournament should be structured differently to get teams qualified. It's not, and this is what happens. You still should have qualified. All of that is true, and you still should have qualified. That doesn't make it okay that you didn't qualify. You didn't qualify because you had a bad lineup, you had bad tactics, you had bad changes in the game, and you didn't get it done in a game that you should have won. That's why you didn't qualify. These other things are factors in the big picture, but you had Jackson Ewell in the wrong position. You had Andres Perea in the wrong position. You didn't make the changes. Lewis wasn't good enough to be in this team the way he played in this tournament. You didn't use players in the right situations like Benji Michel. You pulled Jordi Mihailovic at halftime, which makes no logical sense. You brought on Johnny at the end of the game, who's a holding midfielder. When you're chasing a goal, you showed no urgency to get goals. Those are things that have nothing to do with Miles Robinson. Those are things that have nothing to do with Conrad de la Fuente. Those are things that have nothing to do with the philosophy and the way you play. They have to do with the tactics on the day, and they weren't good enough, and that's why the U.S. isn't going to the Olympics. Rant done.
Let's see. Perfect Tommy, as a public service, is hoping for an Argentine recap.
Yeah, I was kind of in and out with stuff. I had a chance to watch a lot of the action on Paramount Plus. Boca Juniors are still hot garbage. It's just not good. 1-1 draw with Independiente, although Insaurralde, the new signing for Independiente, should have been sent off probably twice in one play, where he tried to stomp on the guy's arm and then stomped on his knee. That was pretty horrendous. Also, if you had VAR in Argentina, Sosa, our favorite goalkeeper, with a tiger tattoo on the back of his head. Yes. Yeah, that's real. Great save on a penalty late, but he was off his line. He was. Shouldn't have happened. River was pretty hot garbage, where they had a man advantage for a long time and scoreless draw hosting Racing. Defensa y Justicia and Vélez was drunken madness, finishing 10v10, finished 1-1. Talleres and Godoy Cruz, I didn't get a chance to really look into that one too much. It was 1-1. Rosario Central and Central Córdoba, 2-2. That was a fun one to watch. A game that finishes 10v9 with the 9 winning 3-2 over Arsenal de Sarandi, Argentinos Juniors. That's a fun one.
Crazy.
I didn't get to finish that one, but you had 3 red cards in the last 11 minutes. Mm-hmm. The second half was madness. Winning goal where it was with the 9 against 11 for Argentinos. Elias Gomez with the goal, and Argentinos Juniors wins. Aldo Civi and Bonfield was an interesting watch. I'm intrigued by Aldo Civi with Fernando Gago. That was a 1-1. That had a red card for Bonfield. Red cards were the story of the weekend. Platense lost 3-1 to Colón, and Colón did not have Pulga Rodriguez. He had a hamstring issue. Colón showed a lot to win this one 3-1. It's Platense, it's the Squid, El Calamar, but Colón winning without Pulga, that's a big, big statement. I think that's very important in this. The Unión de Santa Fe Sarmiento game was scoreless, not really fun. Lanús 4-2 over Patronato. That was what should have happened, and that kicked off the weekend. You've got games tonight to finish out the match week. You have Estudiantes hosting San Lorenzo at 6 o'clock, and you have Atletico Tucumán and Newell's Old Boys at 8:15.
Rich Ransom came in and he wanted a Ronaldo VAR discussion. Have we hit all the topics involving Ronaldo and VAR?
I think so. I mean, it's just, Jarrett, you were ranting about this, and I think you're 100% correct. The fact that, one, you don't have VAR in the European World Cup qualifiers is really stupid, and the fact that you have goal line technology in some and not others is even more stupid. Mm-hmm. There's really no excuse for it.
There's really not. And it has burned you in a couple games already. Not in blatantly obvious ways where you're like, that directly impacted the final scoreline. Like, they did, but it wasn't as... It was still middle of the game when it happened there. Here, it was end of the game. Ball crosses the line, and it's not given. Blatantly obvious. Imagine if Portugal has to go play a qualifier now. Or a playoff game.
Yeah.
Imagine they have to go play a playoff game and they miss and they fall like 1 point short of winning that qualifying game. Like, this is unacceptable.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been yelling about it since last week, since the Netherlands game where you have the handball and then the ball that may or may not have gone over the line.
you have the rugby tackle in the Scotland game. Both of those were egregious, I thought.
Yeah.
At least warranted second looks. This literally changed the outcome of the game. This could change the outcomes of the group as a whole. That's not okay. Nothing about this is acceptable. And UEFA, if you're considering yourself, the top federation, the top confederation in the world, and where Europe and we're great now, then act like it. Yeah. Act like you're not a JUCO tournament.
Yes, that's a good call. It's just not good enough.
And I don't mean to insult JUCO tournaments like that, because the people who put on those JUCO tournaments are, saints, because you've got people wearing 12 different hats when they do that.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, that's what it feels like with European qualifying. It shouldn't be the case. It's a drunken mess, and it should not be the problem. But although it is funny now that after years of hating VAR and wanting VAR eliminated and banned from life, now there's calls for VAR because, wait, it actually fixes things that should not have happened. Oh, yeah, there's that. Funny how that happens.
Dan James, question to the floor.
Yes.
Which do you think is the better scenario for building the reputation of U.S. soccer in general, winning the Olympics or winning CONCACAF Champions League?
Winning CONCACAF Champions League, not even close. The Olympics is not as big of a deal as the reaction to it has been. It's not good. You need to qualify for this because the players need those competitive games. You should have qualified. You have the talent to qualify, 100%. Winning CONCACAF Champions League is a completely different conversation. It would do far more for benefiting American soccer as a whole to have an American club win the CONCACAF Champions League. It's not even close to me. It's not even close. The U23 age group is such a weird one. Even just U20s and U17s, you can go further down, and it's hard to glean too much out of them. If you watch these, you would have thought Freddie Adu would have been the greatest player ever to play in CONCACAF, and he was great at these youth levels, and it never translated. So many other players have done the same. Breck Shea is the all-time leading scorer for the US U20 program in competitive matches. He's been a good professional, but he hasn't been the greatest ever American soccer player. The youth levels don't give you the full picture. The CONCACAF Champions League one would, and for an American club to win that, it would be a much bigger statement.
Okay, Jarrett. Katie Wear a Mask is in this morning. There's, of course, chatter about the hashtag Kreis out and potential replacements. Katie says Jim Curtin would be an intriguing choice with Philly's strong youth development, but is that a lateral move or even downgrade for him at this point? Would love to see him in Europe, to be honest.
Well, it says Jim Curtin's going to coach Celtic, remember?
Yes, that was why I asked.
Nobody is leaving a full-time gig for a part-time gig. And that's the thing we've got to understand about this USU 23. It's not a full-time gig. U.S. soccer is not structured as a full-time gig. So, no, nobody would do it. Jason Kreis was named it because he was available. Period. And I'm trying to think, we've seen in the last few cycles, Andy Herzog was part of Jurgen Klinsmann's staff, and he took it, which made sense. The assistant moving over to be the full-time in a part-time scenario with the U23s. And then Caleb Porter got it when he was still at Akron in the 2012 cycle. So it's not a full-time gig. Jim Curtin would never leave for that. I understand people saying that'd be great, but that ain't happening. That's impossible. But Jim Curtin as a coach, Jarrett, do you want to see him with the national team someday?
Desperately.
Yeah, me too.
Like after Greg is done with this role, this cycle, at least, I don't. Depending on how this cycle goes, if you give him another one, let's see how this goes first. After that, I want Jim Curtin with the national team, especially if he keeps taking the steps he's been taking.
I want to see him with the national team at some point. I'm not going to put a time limit on it. I'm not going to put a timeline on it because I think his next job is with a European club. I think Jim Curtin's one of the best. Question came up in the Discord yesterday about best American managers right now. I've got Curtin number 2 behind Bradley, just because Bradley's been at it longer and has more of a track record. But Jim Curtin is closing that gap really fast. And this was American managers in MLS specifically. So it didn't include somebody like Jesse Marsh. I went Bradley 1, Curtin 2, Vermees 3. I think Peter's in such a good situation in Kansas City that I don't know if he leaves it. But if he ever wanted to, I would hire him for the national team in a heartbeat, because I think he gets the combination of the things we talked about with John Aiken. You know, he's played a 4-3-3, but he's tweaked the way the 4-3-3 works over time to suit the players that he has. He has an identity, but he also would not allow the lack of urgency that you saw yesterday from one of his teams. He would not allow that. Wouldn't happen. So Vermes would be number 3 for me. And then I'm trying to remember, I think it was a step down to Vanny and Caleb Porter. And I think both are good. I mean, Caleb Porter now has, MLS Cups to his name. Greg Vanny has an MLS Cup to his name, along with some other trophies. Both are very, very good. But I think in terms of just being the best manager, the best coach, I like what Curtin's doing. I think he's trending to be the best one. Bradley has a track record that I think is unmatched by anybody else. Bruce Arena is a different conversation, and I mean, Bruce isn't going to be part of that going back into the national team program or U.S. soccer program. He's the best ever. He's the GOAT. There's just no way around it. Trinidad doesn't ruin that. It will be what a lot of people remember, which is sad. Bruce Arena has been the best, from what he did in college to what he did in the early days of MLS to what he did in the middle days of MLS to what he's doing right now with a lesser team in New England to what he did with the national team. He did plenty of good things before Trinidad, and he's done good things since Trinidad. So Bruce is the GOAT. Bradley's next, and Curtin is trending to be the best ever, in my opinion. Right now, it's still early days.
2 more to wrap up on Twitter. Nick Brawley was also at the match yesterday, the matches in Birmingham yesterday, also impressed with what he saw out of Josh Bauer.
Okay.
And John Kirkley wraps us up on Twitter. He says he feels worse about the Olympic loss than he initially thought. He's wondering if there's any way to compensate, meaning more player slots, compensate teams that are playing external tournaments and sending players to national teams, or just get Elon Musk to build a hypersonic jet to get our players over from Europe.
No, you just do it in a different time frame of the year. I mean, the European side of it's always going to be a challenge, and that's why I push back on people saying the MLS clubs are wrong. They should allow them to go, when you're not saying Barcelona should have allowed Conrad de la Fuente. We don't know if he was called. We don't know if he was asked. Same with Red Bull Salzburg and Brendan Aronson. We don't know if he was told, no, you can only play for the senior national team because it's in Europe, and you can't go to this tournament. We don't know that. Those are 2 players who would have helped. You still should have won with what you had. The tournament should be in a different portion of the year. That's something that should change with CONCACAF. It'd be best for the tournament as a whole. But you should have won. You should have won the game yesterday. You had the more talented team. Honduras had the clear identity. Honduras had more urgency from the opening minute. They knew exactly what they were trying to do. They were first to way too many 50-50 balls. They were the more impactful team in the attacking half of the field. They were the better team on the day, and they shouldn't have been in terms of the talent between the 2 teams. That's something that American teams have to change, and you do have to look at the manager here in a lot of ways. We've talked about the tactics. I think he got them wrong. I think he got the lineup selection wrong. I think he got his changes wrong. That's a huge part of it. You also have to look at the players for the mentality, handling the pressure. Those elements are a big part of it too. It's not a simple answer to why the U.S. is not going to the Olympics. There are a lot of layers to it. We've tried to tackle all the layers today. It doesn't change the direction that the American or the U.S. soccer program is going in on the men's side. It is a failure, and there should be a different manager next time around, and I think there would have been no matter what anyway. There have to be better tactics in these situations. But yeah, you need the tournament to be in a different portion of the calendar for sure, but that wasn't the issue here. The talent, the players you had wasn't the issue. You had enough to win a spot, and you didn't. And that is the number 1 issue here. You had enough talent, and I do not like the comments that came out afterwards about, Jason Christ did talk about the time of the year that the qualification is in. It puts the American team in a difficult place. I agree with that. Even beyond players being allowed to go, it is an MLS preseason. You're not in the best of situations here. It'd be better to come in January where at least you're coming after the season. Maybe you pick guys who make a later run. I don't know. Maybe you have a longer camp. Those guys come into camp earlier and you're able to do camp during the MLS offseason. Maybe that's easier. That would make a whole lot more sense. You're not going to do it in the middle of the MLS season because then the other teams it's in the middle of their summer and it just doesn't work from a calendar perspective. I didn't like Jason Kreis with some of the things that he said where it felt like he was blaming the players in ways. The players have blame, but the coach can't blame them in this situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
The players have blame in this from an urgency perspective, but you can't throw them under the bus here, not with young players especially, not with young professionals who, I don't think we're put in the best position to succeed. I really, truly don't. Christ said, not to say we weren't good enough to get it done, because I do believe we had enough quality in our team. We had enough ability in our team. We had enough fight and commitment. But at the end of it, tonight, I didn't think it was quite enough. The talent was not the issue. I think Jason Kreis has to look in the mirror. I do think some players have to look in the mirror as well. The urgency with the way they played was more of an issue. It shouldn't have taken so long to get going. You should have been up for this game. They should have been running through walls at the beginning. They looked tentative early on. Was that because of the position that the coach put them in? Was it because of the pregame prep? We don't know. But they looked way too tentative in a must-win game against a team that you were better than. That should not be the case. They played without confidence in this game, and that's a problem. And that comes back to the coaching staff, in my opinion.
Yep. We are officially caught up on Twitter, sir. What else is on your mind?
All right, we're going to blow through the Twitch pitch here really quick with questions. Do we have odds for Atlanta and Alajuelense yet? Jason Nix asks.
Efforting.
I have not looked, so I'm not sure. Jarrett, I have no idea how this is going to go, but CONCACAF World Cup qualifying in 2026 with the U.S., Mexico, and Canada hosting, it could be an adventure.
Oh, Jesus.
All three got to get spots. I mean, that's one that hasn't been officially determined yet. I would assume they do.
I would assume so. But, hey, I mean, if you want to, there's a good chance you're going to get to watch. I would imagine you would either have to go down into the city or you wouldn't have to drive too far or catch a flight too far to go watch some qualifiers.
It's going to be weird. Probably two teams are going to be determined by the rest of CONCACAF if U.S., Mexico, and Canada get in. That'll be an interesting structure from a qualification tournament for CONCACAF. I'm sure they'll have fun with that one.
It will be. I'm also excited about the potential for Confederations Cup to see.
There's not going to be a Confederations Cup. Nope, that's gone. Adios. Adios. Well, it is about it's about a play-in tournament. That's what they're going to do there. So there's going to be the final qualification spots will be determined in that summer where a Confederations Cup would have been.
Will they still do it here?
I don't know. I don't know if that's a definite. Maybe, possibly.
Because that was something I was looking forward to and always enjoyed with the Confederations, where you got to go, get an idea of, facilities hosting the World Cup coming up.
Yeah.
So it would have been fun to have that. But alas. Okay, well, never mind. My week's ruined.
John,
thanks, FIFA.
Sorry. John, do you have odds?
No live lines exist as of yet.
That's what I thought. Abby brings up Miles Robinson's tweet from last night. Bummed he couldn't be there. Lennon tweeted heartbroken. Bello retweeted Robinson's tweet. Some people in the Atlanta soccer community have tried to make a lot out of that. I don't think you can unless Miles tells you specifically what he meant by his tweet. I think, of course, he wishes he could be there. I think all of them wish they could be there. It doesn't mean they don't understand why they're not. It doesn't mean that they have a problem with why they're not. If you're part of the program, you've been part of the program, and you have a lot of friends in that group. And yeah, you're heartbroken. You're bummed. You wish you could have impacted it differently. But you also know your job with your club, and you know it's a different situation. So I don't think there's anything to it until it is said that there is something to it. That feels like you're trying to create a narrative out of just a emotional reaction from a player that is reacting to an emotional situation. I don't think it's anything wrong with what Miles Robinson said. I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with Lennon or Bellows' comments either. It's, yeah, of course they wish they could be there. It doesn't mean they don't understand why there weren't. That feels like a stretch that some people are trying to stretch into. Yeah. Turner asked, do you think MLS will eventually go the way of divisions? I do. I think it makes sense from a scheduling perspective if they go to 32.
Yeah, it makes sense to do a 4x8 or something like that, like you have in other sports, and have it that way where you divide it up and then you do it that way. But yeah, if it goes to 32, it's 4x8 for me.
That's what I'm thinking. And if you do that, Atlanta's would be, off the top of my head, Miami, Orlando, Charlotte, Atlanta, Nashville. Do you go then DC? Maybe not. Do you go Texas? I don't hate that idea. If you then went with the 3 Texas teams.
There you go.
Dallas, Houston, and Austin in with the Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee contingent. Maybe. I'd have to sit down with the map and break it up and see how that would work. But maybe that's the way it goes.
There you go.
That is my guess of the day. A lot of comment on that. Let's see. We got trivia tomorrow. Not tomorrow night, Abby. It is Wednesday night.
Wednesday.
Any donation gets you into play. Soccer Streets on Twitter, @Soccer Streets, has the link for how you can sign up to play. And we would love to see you play some trivia with us on Wednesday. Myself and Mike Conti are your quiz masters. That's going to be fun.
Set to finish out of the gift certificates again.
Sorry, John. You've been good, though. You've been competitive.
But I'm like fourth or fifth, and it's a real close fourth or fifth. Not quite in that top 3 yet.
Yes. Okay, we have an update on Thursday. So we'll be at Red Hair in Marietta. Not on the square. We'll be at the older Red Hair location, very close to the Atlanta United training ground. And it is looking to be big. It is looking to be a big one with a lot of people who are coming out. We'll have a good number of vendors out there. Soccer in the Streets will be on hand. I know Terminus Legion will be on hand, probably some other of these supporters groups as well. And Kelly Francis will be joining us live on Thursday.
Nice.
Yes. Make sure you keep up with the Flood Project on your social media accounts for all the info, as Scott will keep you posted on specials as they come together. Show will start at 6. Get there at 5. There'll be some specials in the happy hour portion. And, and if you have not picked up your scarf yet or purchased your scarf yet, there's still a few. You need to do it like now. You can come pick it up on Thursday. If you have purchased one and you're going to be there Thursday and you'd like me to bring it to you, can do that too. Abby just said that. So, Abby, you'll get your scarf on Thursday. We're going to start getting the rest shipped out as of today. So be on the lookout for scarves this week as we can get them out the door. But there are still a few left. If you want to get it, it's $25. Send us a message and we'll get you set up. You'll pay via PayPal. It's super easy. It is $5 for shipping if you need it shipped, if you can't make it out to an event to grab yours. So shoot us a message. We'll get you taken care of. The scarves are going fast. Please get your scarf if you want it. Talking about the Olympics, Burn says Olympic soccer is not really a big deal. In Europe, U20s, U17s are more important. Yes, that's absolutely true. It's big with Argentina. It's big with some of the South American teams. It's big in the U.S. It's not the biggest deal that you didn't qualify here. Not qualifying for the U20 World Cup would have been a bigger deal. The last time they did that was in 2011 where they didn't qualify. It's not as big of a deal as maybe some are making it out to be. It is a failure of the coaching staff, and that coaching staff won't be involved with the next cycle. But it is not a failure of the program. That is a difference. This tournament was a failure. The program did not fail. That is, I think, a very important distinction.
Yes.
Will said, without the pandemic, would the Olympic qualifying have been same time frame? Yes. They were in Guadalajara when everything shut down last year. I think it was maybe starting a week earlier, which would have had none of it during a transfer or an international window, actually. So it would have been a little earlier and even more awkward. It worked out better to where you possibly could have got players in during an international window with this tournament. You didn't do it. Ricky, we're leaving. We're about to leave, so don't get any ideas. There are the rumors out there, and I have not looked into it as of yet. Rumors about Javier Pastore potentially leaving Roma. He has been linked to Dallas and Atlanta, which are two very different clubs and very different situations. I don't know anything about it right now. Javier Pastore has been an incredibly talented player. He's also been very injury prone. I don't know where he is on that. So I don't know if there's anything to it. It would take some maneuvering, I'm assuming, from a roster perspective. And I'm not even getting into international slots. It would take some maneuvering in terms of the deal. So I'm waiting to see more on this one. But don't freak out on every rumor you see. Some of them don't actually fit. Some of them do fit. Some of them are surprises and fit when we didn't think they'd fit. This one, I don't know. I'm not sure about this one.
All right. Still nothing on Twitter, so we're all good.
Okay, we're going. We're leaving. We'll be back for soccer over there this evening. Jarrett, you joining us this evening?
Yeah, I suppose so. And Thursday.
Wow, craziness.
Nice.
Jarrett Smith will be in the house on Thursday. Madness.
Sweet.
All right.
I know.
It's lining up.
You've
it's
been warned.
Tough. You probably
Awesome.
have killed our attendance now, but that's okay. That's all right.
That's all right.
I'm just kidding with you, Ricky. I'm just kidding with all of you. Thanks for hanging out with us.
He's not kidding with me, though.
No, I'm not kidding with Jarrett. That's 100% legit.
That is true.
Thanks for hanging out. We'll be back at 7 for soccer over there. We'll get deeper into early Euro favorites based off Nathan P's question. We'll look at the European qualifying from the weekend, more games this week. We'll start to look ahead to the weekend as the club matches resume, and you've got a massive game in Germany that we'll start to look at. Thanks for hanging out with us. We'll see you at 7. Mucho platio.
Mucho platio.
Mucho platio.